Hey guys, tonight we're plunging into history's darkest punishments, where a wrong word could doom you forever. In medieval London, 80% of prisoners in the tower were devoured alive by rats within days. Could you endure even one night in that filth picture torchlight flickering on rusted chains as your bones snapped like twigs for daring to read a forbidden scripture fair justice? Right. Or imagine an elephant crushing you flat for unpaid taxes. A bored emperor's twisted entertainment that makes modern fines feel like a gentle nudge. Historians debate if these horrors were exaggerated propaganda to scare rebels straight. But the chills are real, blending terror with absurd cruelty that reshaped our world's sense of right and wrong. This isn't just a tale, it's a sarcastic, sleep-soothing whisper into the abyss of human ingenuity gone wrong, worse than a dead phone battery at midnight. Share if you'd pick a jury trial over a medieval rack. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. Let me know where you're watching from and what time it is where you are. I love seeing how far this sleepy little time machine reaches. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You step into the fog-shrouded alleys of medieval London. The damp cobblestones slick under your bare feet like a treacherous carpet, woven from river slime and forgotten regrets. Each uneven bump jarring your toes with a cold jolt that races up your legs, mingling with the acrid stench of Thames muck that assaults your nostrils like an uninvited spectre, thick and cloying, forcing you to breathe shallowly through pursed lips that taste faintly of salt and despair. The year hovers around 1350, though dates blur in this perpetual haze, where the river's whispers carry tales of decay, its waters lapping against mossy walls as if eager to claim more souls, and you feel the chill of iron chains bite into your wrists with a grinding insistence. Not a dramatic flourish, but a persistent ache that numbs your fingers, the metal's rust flaking onto your skin like bitter confetti, leaving a metallic tang on your tongue when you instinctively lick your chapped lips. A sensory motif that echoes the flickering torchlight from distant sconces, casting erratic shadows on the wet wool of your threadbare tunic, heavy and sodden, clinging to your body like a second skin reluctant to let go. Historians still argue whether these chains were recycled from the armour of fallen crusaders, or merely cheap forgings meant to break spirits as much as bodies. But in this moment, their weight pulls you forward, guided by a hooded guard whose boots squelch in the puddles, his breath rasping like dry leaves underfoot, a sound that amplifies the injustice of it all, where a mere whisper against the crown could land you here, stripped of dignity in a city that feasts on its own. You stumble slightly, your knee grazing a jagged stone that draws a warm trickle down your shin, the sensory struggle intensifying as the damp chill seeps deeper into your bones, making your joints ache with a preview of torments to come, while the iron taste sharpens on your teeth, as if the chains themselves are leaching into your very essence. Ironically, this drag through the mist feels worse than scrolling endlessly through a feed of bad news today, where doom is digital but no less draining, and you catch a fascinating tidbit in your mind's wanderings, how executioners sometimes used inflated pig bladders as mock heads for practice beheadings, an absurd rehearsal in a world where real ones were all too common. The physical event escalates as the guard yanks the chain, propelling you through a narrow archway where the stone scrapes your shoulders raw. A shocking scrape that blooms into stinging warmth, lightly dramatised by the distant cry of a raven perched on a gallows silhouette. Sad and solitary, reminding you of prisoners like John Gerard centuries later in 1597, a Jesuit hung by manacles in the tower to extract confessions, his wrists bearing scars that spoke of faith unbroken. Sarcasm flickers in your thoughts. Oh, how enlightened. A society where torture extracts truth like leeches prescribe cures for the humours, bleeding out secrets in the name of order, much like endless customer service calls that promise resolution but deliver only frustration. You glance at the torchlight sputtering ahead, its flame a feeble warrior against the encroaching dark, and for a poetic zoom out, the city unfurls in your imagination like a tattered map of human folly. Alleys twisting into veins that pulse with lives on the brink, where kings plot above and the condemned whisper below. A vast web where one thread's snap echoes through eternity. The wet wool weighs heavier now, mutating the chill into a smothering embrace that presses against your chest, restricting breaths that come in ragged bursts, and you sense the guard's grip tighten, his calloused hand brushing yours with unintended roughness, a reminder that even enforcers are pawns in this grand theatre of pain. Deeper into the labyrinth you go, the whispers of forgotten screams growing from faint echoes to a chorus that vibrates in the damp air, not mere imagination but residues etched into the stones, tales of elites imprisoned here, nobles, spies, heretics whose only crime was crossing the wrong path, like Anna Askew in 1546 twisted on the rack for her Protestant leanings, her refusal to name friends a quiet act of defiance that historians debate as heroic or foolhardy, her dislocated limbs a testament to cruelty's inefficiency. A light sarcasm surfaces amid the dread talk about a bad book club meeting, where discussing scriptures leads to eternal agony. Far worse than a heated online debate that ends with a block. The iron on your teeth intensifies as fear parches your mouth, making you bite down inadvertently. A tiny spark of pain that grounds you in the moment, while the torchlight dances wildly now, casting grotesque caricatures on the walls, mutating into faces of the tormented, eyes hollow and pleading. You feel a surprising twist as the guard mutters under his breath about recent escapes, like that of a nameless thief who slipped chains using a sliver of bone from a meal. A tidbit that sparks a fleeting hope in your chest, only to be dashed by the tower's silhouette looming larger, its battlements like jagged teeth ready to devour. The fog thickens, wrapping around you like a shroud, the sensory motifs blending into a symphony of discomfort, the chill deepening, the wool sodden and itching, the iron taste bitter as regret, and you ponder the academic uncertainty surrounding these dungeons, whether the rat-infested tales were factual horrors or embellished lore to deter the masses, much like urban legends today that keep us locked indoors. Modern parallels flood your mind, this forced March mirrors being herded through airport security, stripped of freedoms under watchful eyes. But here the stakes are life itself, no pat-down but a prelude to oblivion. The gate creaks open ahead, a yawning maw of darkness that swallows the last vestiges of twilight, and you feel the psychological chill settle like frost on your soul. Not from the cold alone, but from the dawning realization that survival demands forgetting who you were, surrendering to the shadows that beckon with insidious promise. What horrors await beyond that threshold, you wonder, as the chains rattle like a final lament, pulling you inexorably into the heart of the beast. 80% of prisoners in medieval London's tower dungeons perished within a week, devoured alive by swarms of river rats that turned human despair into their frenzied feast. Could you last even a single night in that abyss of filth and forgotten screams? The air thickens around you as you descend further into the pitch-black void. A suffocating blanket woven from damp stone and the pungent reek of river muck that slithers down your throat like a living thing, coating your tongue with a bitter slime that mutates the lingering iron tang from your chains into something sharper, like rusted blood mingled with decay, forcing you to gag softly against the onslaught, each breath a visceral reminder of the injustice that condemns the innocent to rot alongside the guilty in this underground hell. The uneven steps under your bare feet are treacherous, slick with moss and the residue of countless floods, each one jabbing into your soles with a cold precision that sends jolts of numbness up your legs, blending with the wet wool of your tunic now heavy as a drowned corpse, clinging to your skin in clammy folds that chafe and weigh you down. A sensory struggle that feels like the tower itself is pressing its ancient grievances upon you. The walls narrowing with every downward spiral as if the earth resents your intrusion. Torchlight from the entrance above has faded to a distant memory, its once flickering warmth now a ghostly afterimage that mutates into faint, phosphorescent gleams from bioluminescent fungi on the stones, casting eerie, shifting patterns that make the shadows dance like mocking phantoms, illuminating just enough to heighten your dread without offering solace. You're in the infamous Rat Dungeon, a chamber built below the Thames waterline in the 1300s, where high tides forced hordes of rodents from their burrows into the cells. A historical tidbit as absurd as it is chilling guards, sometimes tossed in scraps of mouldy cheese laced with poison. Not to kill the rats, but to make them more aggressive, turning nature's scavengers into unwitting executioners for the Crown's petty vendettas. Historians still argue whether these dungeons were engineered for such cruelty, or if the rat infestations were mere accidents exaggerated in chronicles to deter uprisings. But as the first soft patter of scurrying feet echoes closer, the debate dissolves into irrelevance. The reality a symphony of scratches that prickle your skin like icy needles, not yet touching, but promising contact. Your heart pounding in rhythm with their advance. The physical event unfolds as you're shoved onto the damp floor, chains rattling as you collapse, the gritty stone biting into your knees with a dull throb that radiates upward, mingling with the chill seeping through the wet wool, now mutating into a sodden barrier that traps your body heat while inviting the cold deeper. Your wrists throbbing from the iron's unyielding grip, the metallic taste on your teeth intensifying as fear parches your mouth and makes you bite down involuntarily. A shocking sadness washes over you as you think of a young apprentice boy in 1362, thrown here for pilfering a merchant's coin purse to feed his starving siblings, his cries echoing unanswered until the rat silenced him forever. A lightly dramatised tale of injustice where poverty was a crime worse than murder in the eyes of the elite, leaving you to ponder how many such souls vanished without record, their bones mingling with the muck underfoot. Sarcasm creeps into your thoughts, the pinnacle of medieval hospitality, a complimentary rodent spa treatment, far worse than checking into a budget motel infested with bedbugs, where at least you can complain to management without risking further torment. The scurrying multiplies, no longer distant but encircling, their soft feet brushing against your ankles in tentative explorations, the sensory horror escalating as one ventures bolder, its whiskers tickling your calf like whispers from the grave, and you jerk away, only to feel the chains restrict you, the iron grinding into your flesh with a fresh burn that draws a gasp, the air now thick with the musky odour of fur and waste, a stench that clogs your nostrils and makes your eyes water in the impenetrable dark. For a poetic zoom-out, the dungeon swells in your imagination to encompass the sprawling Thames above, a river of life and commerce where barges glide past oblivious merchants, haggling over silks and spices, their laughter a cruel counterpoint to the silent agonies below. A vast underbelly where the city's sins settle like sediment, burying the forgotten in layers of indifference. A modern comparison flickers through your mind. This entrapment mirrors being lost in a crowded subway during rush hour, bodies pressing in with impersonal force, but here the crowd is vermin, and escape isn't a station away but a delusion shattered by the next tide. You recall the surprising twist from earlier whispers of survival, like that of a cunning smuggler in 1401 who, according to lore, fashioned a makeshift whistle from a rat bone to mimic bird calls that scared the horde away long enough for a guard's pitying intervention. A tale some dismiss as romantic fiction, but others uphold as evidence that ingenuity could defy even this pit. Though, in your case, no such tool presents itself, only the growing boldness of the rats as one nips at your toe, not breaking skin but sending a spark of pain that races up your leg, blending with the chill now mutating into a feverish shiver from the damp wool's unrelenting embrace. Light sarcasm surfaces again well. At least the entertainment is free. A live-action thriller starring you as the unwilling lead. Better than binge-watching horror on a glitchy stream that buffers at the scariest parts, leaving you hanging in suspense. The rats press closer, their bodies a writhing mass you sense more than see. The darkness a blanket that amplifies every sound, every brush of fur against your exposed skin, and you kick futilely. The chains clanking in futile protest, the iron taste now laced with the salt of sweat trickling into your mouth, a reminder that resistance only hastens exhaustion. Another fascinating tidbit emerges from the haze of fear. Some prisoners were given a single tallow candle, not for illumination, but to melt and seal their own wounds from initial bites. An absurd self-care ritual that rarely stemmed infection, but prolonged the agony, turning survival into a grim game of endurance against both beast and biology. The injustice of it all coils in your gut like a serpent. Not just the physical torment, but the systemic cruelty that deemed common folk disposable. Their sufferings a deterrent etched into the city's stones, while nobles above feasted on venison and plotted wars. The scurrying reaches a crescendo, a rat scrambling up your leg with startling speed, its claws digging in for purchase, the prickling now a series of stings that make you cry out softly, the echo bouncing off the walls like a mocking reply, and you swat blindly, feeling fur under your palm before it scurries away, leaving you panting in the fetid air. The wet wool feels like it's fusing with your flesh, the chill deepening into a numbing frost that wars with the burning scratches, and the ghostly shimmer from the fungi casts illusions of movement everywhere, mutating the darkness into a living entity that pulses with malice. You wonder about the academic uncertainty surrounding these accounts, whether chroniclers like Geoffrey Chaucer, who walked these streets, omitted such horrors from his tales to avoid royal wrath, or if the exaggerations served as moral fables in a time when truth bent to power. A clever commentary slips in ironic how rats, the ultimate survivors, thrive where humans crumble, much like cockroaches in our post-apocalyptic fantasies, outlasting us all with their unyielding adaptability. The tide must be rising outside, for the scurrying intensifies, a wave of bodies surging toward you, their nibbles turning to tentative bites that draw pinpricks of warmth trickling down your skin. The pain a distant hum amid the overwhelming fear, and you curl tighter, the chains restricting even that small comfort. The irons grind a constant companion. For another zoom out, envision the River Thames as a vein of London's heart, pumping life above while draining it below, a poetic duality where the city's grandeur rests on foundations of suffering, the rats mere agents in a larger cycle of neglect and retribution. The modern aside returns, this is worse than a power outage during a storm, huddled in the dark with unknown noises. But here the storm is perpetual, and the blackout is your new reality. You feel a rat's weight on your thigh, its breath hot against your wool-clad leg, and you freeze, the psychological chill deepening as realization dawns that endurance isn't victory but prolonged defeat. The dungeon's true weapon, not the rodents, but the erosion of will in the endless night. What unseen horrors will the next surge bring, as the rats grow bolder and the darkness whispers that breaking is inevitable? You feel the ropes tighten around your joints with a slow, inexorable creak, the wooden frame groaning like an old ship's hull under storm winds. Each turn of the ratchet sending a fresh wave of burning ache through your shoulders and hips, a pain that starts as a dull throb but blossoms into fiery lances that make your limbs scream in silent protest. The texture of coarse hemp biting into your skin like 1,000 tiny teeth, raw and unyielding, blending with the lingering damp chill from the dungeon above where the rat's scurries still echo in your ears, now mutating the iron taste on your tongue into a coppery sharpness from clenched jaws that grind against the fear bubbling up from your gut. The year shifts subtly in this timeless chamber of the tower, perhaps 1447 now, as you're strapped to the rack. A device born in the shadowy corners of inquisitorial zeal, its rollers turning with mechanical indifference under the hands of hooded interrogators whose breaths come in measured huffs, the air thick with the scent of oiled wood and sweat-soaked leather, a sensory struggle that presses against your chest, making each inhale a laboured gasp as the wet wool of your tunic, still sodden from the dungeon's embrace, clings tighter, now stretched thin across your torso like a second layer of torment, absorbing the cold sweat that beads on your skin and turning it into an icy sheath that heightens every pull. Torchlight flickers from iron sconces bolted to the stone walls, casting elongated shadows that dance across the frame like accusing fingers, mutating from the ghostly shimmers of the dungeon into harsh, jumping flames that illuminate the interrogators' masked faces, their eyes glinting with a mix of duty and detached curiosity, as if you're not a person, but a puzzle to be unravelled, the light playing on the ropes that bind your wrists and ankles, highlighting the frayed fibres that dig deeper with every crank. Historians debate whether the rack was truly invented in England or imported from continental torturers during the Wars of the Roses, some claiming it evolved from simple stretching benches used on sailors for minor infractions. But in this moment, its origin fades into irrelevance as the physical event escalates, the ratchet clicking once more, pulling your arms upward and legs downward in a symphony of strain that dislocates your elbows with a sickening pop, the sound echoing in the chamber like a dry branch snapping underfoot, sending shockwaves of agony that radiate outward, making your vision blur with tears that sting your eyes. The sensory motifs persist and twist, the iron taste now laced with the salty bite of blood from a bitten tongue, the wet wool tearing slightly at the seams from the extension, releasing a musty odour that mixes with the metallic tang of fear sweat. And the torchlight's heat adds a new layer, warming your exposed skin just enough to make the cold drafts from the stone floor feel like knives slicing through the gaps. A shocking element emerges as you recall Anne Askew, the young woman from earlier Whispers in the Alleys, strapped here for hours in this very chamber, her Protestant faith a crime in Catholic eyes, refusing to name her fellow believers even as her joints gave way. A sad defiance lightly dramatised in the chronicles where her paralysed form was carried to the stake for burning, her silence a quiet rebellion that outlasted the pain, leaving you to wonder if your own resolve could hold against such methodical cruelty. Sarcasm whispers in your mind, oh, how efficient, a machine that extracts confessions like a bad dentist pulling teeth. Far worse than enduring a marathon conference call where the only torture is boredom and bad coffee. But here the stakes are your very bones, real and irreparable. The interrogators pause, their voices murmuring questions about imagined plots against the king, their words blurring in your ears as the pain crests, a wave that drowns out reason, and you feel the absurd historical tidbits surface amid the haze. Some racks were fitted with spiked rollers for extra persuasion, though yours mercifully lacks them, a small mercy in a sea of malice, like leech prescriptions for balancing humours that only drained the victim further without cure. For a poetic zoom-out, the chamber expands in your imagination to the vast tower complex above, a fortress of stone and secrets, where royals dine on roasted peacock while below, the machinery of control grinds human will to dust, a lyrical contrast of opulence and oblivion that shifts the tone from personal agony to the broader tapestry of powers in different weave. Where one person's stretch is another's entertainment, the ropes creak again, the pull resuming with relentless precision, your knees and hips protesting with grinding pops that send fresh fire through your nerves, the sensory struggle intensifying as the wet wool rips audibly at your shoulders, exposing raw skin to the drafty air, the chill mutating into a burning contrast against the strain, while the iron taste floods your mouth anew from gritted teeth that feel ready to shatter. A modern aside flickers through the pain. This is worse than a grueling yoga class gone wrong, where the instructor pushes you beyond limits for growth. But here the only growth is in your suffering. No safe word to halt the session, just the interrogator's impassive stares under the torchlight's glare, now mutating into a halo of heat that singes your hair faintly, adding a smoky scent to the mix of sweat and fear. You try to speak, words tumbling out in a desperate bid to end it, but they twist your confessions, cranking harder, the physical event peaking as your spine arches unnaturally, every muscle screaming in unison, a chorus of torment that drowns your thoughts in white-hot static. Light sarcasm bubbles up once more. Congratulations on the free chiropractic adjustment, courtesy of the Crown, better than any overpriced spa treatment that promises realignment but delivers only temporary relief. Though here the realignment is permanent, leaving survivors hobbled for life. The historical fact folds in naturally, this device. Used on prisoners of war and heretics alike, often extracted false admissions, as in the case of Guy Fawkes centuries later in 1605, whose signature post-rack was a shaky scrawl that betrayed his broken body but not his spirit, a testament to how pain births lies more readily than truth. Academic uncertainty lingers around the rack's efficacy. Some scholars argue it was more theatrical than practical, a show of power meant to intimidate witnesses outside the chamber, but as another turn stretches your limbs further, the debate feels moot, the pain all too real, radiating from joints that pop and grind like poorly oiled gears. The torchlight dances wildly now, casting grotesque elongations of your form on the wall, a shadow play of suffering that mirrors the inner turmoil, the wet wool fully torn at one sleeve, exposing your arm to the cold that clashes with the inner fire, the iron taste now overwhelming as blood trickles from your lip, bitten in a futile attempt to stifle cries. A surprising twist revisits Anne Askew's story, unlike the tales. Some hidden accounts suggest she whispered prayers that unnerved her tormentors, causing one to falter and loosen the ropes momentarily, a fleeting mercy born of superstition in an age where faith could bend even iron wills. Though for you, no such reprieve comes, only the relentless crank that threatens to tear you asunder. The chamber's air grows stifling, heavy with the scent of exertion and fear, and you feel the injustice like a weight heavier than the ropes. Not just your pain, but the systemic rot that allows such devices to exist. Punishing thought crimes while the powerful feast unmolested. For another zoom out, picture the tower as a microcosm of England's fractured soul, its spires piercing the sky while its depths plumb human depravity. A poetic duality where light and shadow entwine in eternal dance, shifting your focus from bodily anguish to the timeless question of why suffering serves as society's glue. The pull eases momentarily, the interrogators conferring in low tones, but the ache persists, a throbbing echo that pulses through your frame, the sensory motifs converging in a cacophony of discomfort, the mutated torchlight blinding, the wool, a ragged ruin, the taste a constant metallic assault, and you wonder if confession will bring release, or merely a different form of doom. What fresh agony will the next turn unleash? As your limbs cry out in a language only pain understands, the racks creak a harbinger of fractures yet to come. You plunge into the salty waves with a gasp that fills your lungs with brine. The ocean's cruel embrace dragging you under as the rope tied around your waist snaps taut, pulling you along the barnacle-encrusted hull of the ship like a rag doll caught in a riptide, each barnacle slicing into your back with razor precision that sends stinging trails of warmth trickling down your skin, a pain that starts shallow but deepens into raw gashes as the water pressure crushes against your chest, making every breath a desperate heave against the foaming chaos that tastes of salt and despair on your tongue, mutating the coppery sharpness from the rack's torment into a briny bitterness that coats your mouth like a venomous film, forcing you to swallow convulsively amid the churning depths. The ear blurs to the 1600s, perhaps, aboard a Dutch East India Company vessel where keel-hauling was the sailor's dreaded fate for theft or mutiny. The rope looped around the ship's girth, binding your arms to your sides and feet together. The crew above hauling with rhythmic grunts that echo through the water like muffled thunder, the physical event unfolding as the hull looms overhead, a shadowy predator of wood and tar that grazes your neck with its curved underbelly, threatening to snap it clean if the pull isn't even, the sensory struggle intensifying as seaweed tangles in your hair, slimy strands slithering across your face like cold fingers, while the wet wool of your shredded tunic, now a tattered remnant from the tower's trials, balloons and deflates with the currents, clinging to your wounds like a parasitic shroud that amplifies the salt water's burn, turning scrapes into fiery abrasions that pulse with every wave. Torchlight from the deck above pierces the surface in fractured beams, mutating from the chamber's harsh glare into watery shards that dance on the hull's barnacles, illuminating their jagged edges just enough to heighten your terror as they rake across your thighs, the light refracting into ghostly halos that make the depths feel alive with spectral watchers, the air, or rather the lack of it, thick in your bursting lungs, each stolen breath a gulp of foam that chokes and revives in cruel alternation. Historians debate whether keel-hauling originated with the Dutch Navy in the 1560s or was borrowed from ancient Roman punishments for deserters, some arguing it was less about execution and more about spectacle to maintain discipline on long voyages. But as the rope drags you further, the barnacles carving deeper furrows into your flesh, the academic quibble fades against the raw reality of survival, your body twisting futilely to avoid the hull's keel, that razor-sharp spine of the ship that could splinter bones like kindling if the crew pulls too hard. The shocking element strikes as you think of a nameless sailor in 1629 keel-hauled thrice for striking an officer during a storm, his body emerging scarred but alive only to succumb to infections that turned his wounds into festering maps of agony. A sad tale lightly dramatised in Captain's logs, where his final delirium spoke of mermaids luring him back to the deep, leaving you to empathise with his futile fight against the sea's indifferent maw, the injustice of maritime law that spared nobles but flayed the common tar for minor slights. Sarcasm bubbles up through the pain. Oh, what a refreshing dip, like a spa day gone horribly wrong, far worse than plunging into an icy pool after a sauna, where the shock is brief and voluntary. But here it's endless and enforced, the crew's laughter filtering down through the waves like distorted jeers from a distant party you're not invited to. The rope yanks again, propelling you around the ship's bow, the barnacles now scraping your chest and arms in a symphony of lacerations that draw clouds of blood into the water, attracting shadowy fins that circle curiously, the sensory motifs converging in a maelstrom, the briny taste overwhelming your senses, the wet wool disintegrating into floating rags that tangle around your legs, the watery light mutating into a blinding prism that stings your eyes as you surface momentarily, gasping for air that feels like knives in your salt-raw throat. For a poetic zoom-out, the ship swells in your mind to a microcosm of Empire's reach, sails billowing like wings over oceans claimed by flags and greed, while below the waves churn with the discarded lives of those who built the fleets. A lyrical ebb and flow where human frailty meets the sea's eternal indifference, shifting your focus from personal flaying to the vast currents that carry history's wreckage. A modern comparison surfaces amid the turmoil this drag beneath the hull mirrors, being caught in a riptide during a beach vacation, a panic of fighting invisible forces that pull you under. But here the forces are human, deliberate. No lifeguard whistle to call halt, just the crew's indifferent haul that could end in drowning or disfigurement. You feel the keel graze your spine, a glancing blow that sends a jolt through your frame without breaking bone. A surprising twist revisiting the tower's rack where Anne Askew's stretched limbs foreshadowed this nautical extension. But with a new revelation from whispered sailor yarns, some survivors, like a pirate in 1718 under Blackbeard's command, claimed the barnacle's cuts formed patterns resembling maps to hidden treasures, a delirious myth that turned their scars into badges of lore, though for you the patterns are random agony, lines of fire that pulse with the ship's rhythm. The absurd historical tidbit emerges captains sometimes coated the ropes with tar to prevent slippage, but this also sealed wounds prematurely, trapping seawater inside to breed infections that killed slower than the sea itself. A leech-like prescription for prolonged suffering in an era when medicine was as crude as the justice it served. The pull continues, dragging you along the starboard side now. The barnacle's less dense but sharper here, slicing into your calves with precision that makes your legs kick involuntarily, stirring up silt that clouds the water and chokes your vision. The briny bitterness now laced with grit that grinds between your teeth, the wet wool fragments floating away like shed skin, leaving you more exposed to the cold currents that numb your extremities while the cuts burn in contrast. Light sarcasm flickers again. Talk about a full-body exfoliation, courtesy of Mother Nature's cheese grater. Better than any overpriced spa scrub that promises renewal, but delivers only pink skin, though here the renewal is doubtful. The crew deciding if one pass suffices or if round two awaits, their voices muffled above like judges in a fast trial. The historical fact weaves in this punishment, banned in the British Navy by 1850 after humanitarian outcries, often left survivors scarred from head to toe, shunned as marked men in ports where tattoos told stories, but these welts spoke only of shame, a fate that turned hardy sailors into beggars overnight. Academic uncertainty clouds the origins. Did the Dutch truly pioneer it in 1560 during the 80 Years' War? Or was it an evolution from ancient Greek practices of dragging traitors behind triremes? A debate that rages in maritime archives but offers no comfort as the rope tightens anew, pulling you toward the stern where the propeller-like wake threatens to twist your body further. The watery light dims as clouds gather above, mutating into a stormy gloom that makes the hull's shadow even more ominous, the barnacles glinting like teeth in the flashes of lightning that pierce the surface, illuminating schools of fish darting away from your bloodied form. The injustice swells like the waves, not just your suffering, but the hierarchical brutality of shipboard life, where captains dined on fine wines while the deckhands faced the deep for the slightest infraction. A system that echoed the tower's cells but amplified by the isolation of open sea. For another zoom out, envision the ocean as history's great equalizer, swallowing kings' ambitions and sailors' dreams alike. Its depths a repository of lost souls where barnacle scars fade into the abyss, a poetic dissolution that widens your perspective from bodily torment to the timeless tide that erodes all empires. The rope slacks slightly as you near the end of the circuit, the crew hauling you up sputtering and bleeding, but the pain lingers, a throbbing map of lacerations that promises infection's slow creep. The briny taste persisting as you cough up seawater, the wet wool remnants stripped away by the drag, leaving you shivering on deck under the crew's appraising gazes. What lingering shadows will these scars cast as the ship sails on and new punishments loom on the horizon like gathering storms? You hear the thunderous footfalls before you see the beast, each step shaking the ground like an earthquake in miniature. compressing the dry Indian soil beneath your bound body into a dusty coffin that rises in choking clouds around your face, the fine particles invading your nostrils with a gritty dryness that scratches your throat raw, mutating the briny bitterness from the ocean's drag into a parched earthiness that coats your tongue like sun-baked clay, forcing you to cough weakly against the restraints that pin your arms behind your back. The remnants of rope burns from the keel hauling, now aggravated by the rough twine digging into your wrists. A sensory struggle that blends the lingering saltwater sting with the arid heat of the 19th century Mughal plaza, where public executions drew crowds like festivals, the sun beating down mercilessly on your exposed skin, turning the tattered wool scraps clinging to your frame once sodden but now baked stiff into a prickly armour that irritates every shift, as if the fabric itself resents your survival from the sea's clutches, only to deliver you to this landlocked horror. The year lingers in the early 1800s, under the rule of emperors who wielded elephants as instruments of justice, their massive forms trained for spectacle in the courts of Delhi or Agra, the physical event commencing as the elephant's trunk swings ominously close, its leathery tip brushing the air above your head with a whoosh that stirs the dust into whirlwinds. The beast's wrinkled hide gleaming under the harsh sunlight that mutates from the watery shards of the ship's deck into a blinding glare reflecting off golden howdahs, where handlers perch like gods, directing the animal with prods and commands in a language you don't understand. The torchlight of previous torments now absent, but echoed in the flickering heat waves rising from the ground. Illusory flames that dance across the plaza's baked earth. Historians debate whether this punishment, documented in British colonial reports as late as 1857 during the Sepoy Mutiny, was truly widespread or amplified in Western accounts to justify imperial intervention, some arguing it stemmed from ancient Persian traditions rather than indigenous Indian practices. But as the elephant's shadow eclipses you, the scholarly quibble evaporates against the immediate dread, your heart pounding in sync with the rhythmic thuds that vibrate through your prone form, the ground pressing up against your chest like a vice, squeezing breath from lungs already weary from the rack's stretch and the sea's churn. The shocking element looms as you recall the fourth Mughal Emperor Jahangir in the early 1600s, who allegedly ordered dozens crushed in a single day out of sheer boredom, including tax evaders and petty thieves. A sad extravagance lightly dramatised in court chronicles where one man's yawn birthed another's annihilation, his whims turning the plaza into a theatre of death, where orphans and murderers alike met the same flattening end, leaving you to empathise with a forgotten vendor from 1820 trampled for a disputed debt, his final plea lost in the crowd's murmurs, an injustice that makes your bound position feel like a scripted role in history's cruel pageant. The elephant's foot hovering now, its padded sole descending slowly under the handler's guidance, compressing the air around you into a suffocating pocket that tastes of dust and animal musk, the wet wool now dry and cracking, flaking away in the heat, exposing raw patches of skin to the abrasive soil that grinds like sandpaper with every tremor. Sarcasm drifts through your mind, the ultimate foot massage, courtesy of a multi-ton therapist. Far worse than stepping on a Lego brick in the dark of your modern living room, where the pain is fleeting and comical, but here it's deliberate and final. The crowd's cheers filtering through like applause for a performance you're unwilling to star in. Their faces a blur of curiosity and callousness under the sun's unrelenting gaze. The absurd historical tidbit surfaces amid the tension. Elephants were sometimes adorned with painted tusks for these events, not for aesthetics, but to symbolise divine judgment, a leech-like prescription of spectacle that drained the condemned of dignity while feeding the ruler's ego, turning execution into art in an era when mercy was as rare as rain in the desert. For a poetic zoom-out, the plaza expands in your imagination to the sprawling Indian subcontinent, a land of palaces and poverty where rivers like the Ganges carry away the ashes of the crushed, their dust mingling with sacred waters in an eternal cycle of birth and brutality. A lyrical flow that shifts your gaze from the elephant's descending foot to the timeless rivers that witness empires rise and fall, indifferent to the footprints left on human lives. A modern comparison flickers as the pressure builds. This flattening feels like being caught under a malfunctioning elevator, the slow descent of inevitable doom. But here there's no emergency button, just the handler's prod urging the beast onward. the sunlight mutating into a hazy veil as dust clouds thicken, obscuring the crowd and turning the scene into a surreal fog of impending end. You twist against the bonds, the rope chafing fresh wounds from the barnacle's kisses, a futile wriggle that only embeds more grit into your skin. The sensory motifs converging in a storm of dryness, the earth taste choking, the wool cracking like brittle leaves, the sunlight's glare piercing your eyes like accusatory beams, and you feel the elephant's foot make contact, not crushing but pressing lightly at first, the weight testing the ground around your head, compressing the soil into a cradle that moulds to your form, the vibration rumbling through your skull like distant artillery. The injustice coils tighter, not just your fate, but the arbitrary whims that condemn tax dodgers alongside rebels, a system where boredom birthed bloodbaths, echoing the tower's cells and the ship's keel, but amplified by the exotic terror of animal agency. The elephant's trunk curling lazily as if bored itself, a participant in humanity's folly. Light sarcasm emerges again. Talk about being underfoot. A literal interpretation of feeling stepped on in life's hierarchy, better than any corporate ladder where the crush is metaphorical, but no less soul-sapping. Though here the metaphor becomes flesh. The handler's commands a script you can't rewrite. The historical fact folds in this method, outlawed by British reforms in the mid-1800s after eyewitness accounts horrified Victorian sensibilities, often involved multiple passes if the first didn't kill. The elephant trained to target limbs before the torso, prolonging the spectacle for the crowd's edification, a practice that turned justice into entertainment in courts, where emperors like Shah Jahan built Taj Mahals above while trampling lives below. Academic uncertainty surrounds the numbers. Did Jahangir truly crush hundreds in a day? Or were the figures inflated by rival chroniclers to tarnish his legacy? A debate that rages in Mughal historiography, but offers no reprieve as the foot descends further, the pressure building on your chest now, squeezing air from lungs in measured increments, the dust clouding your vision into a hazy brown veil, where shapes blur into monstrosities. A surprising twist revisits the smuggler's bone whistle from the rat dungeon, but mutated here whispers among the crowd speak of a condemned thief in 1810, who survived by rolling at the last moment, the elephant's foot missing his head by inches, a tale twisted into legend where he claimed divine intervention from a hidden amulet, though for you no such artifact materializes, only the inexorable weight that threatens to flatten your ribs like parchment under a press. The sunlight beats down relentlessly, mutating into a furnace that bakes the plaza, the wool remnants crisping at the edges, the earth taste now mingled with sweat that stings your eyes, and you feel the psychological chill despite the heat, a cold dread that seeps from the realization that death here isn't swift but theatrical, a performance where your end entertains the masses. For another zoom out, imagine the elephant as a symbol of empire's might, its trunk a sceptre of destruction in lands where gods walked on four legs, a poetic embodiment of power's footprint on the fragile human frame, widening the scene to continents clashing in colonial shadows. The pressure eases as the handler calls a halt, perhaps for show, the foot lifting with a suction that pulls at the soil, leaving you gasping in the dust, but the threat lingers, the beast's eye regarding you with indifferent wisdom, a strange visual image of ancient patience poised over fleeting life. What new crush will the next command bring? As the crowd's murmurs swell, and the sun's glare promises no shade from the gathering doom, you feel the sharpened pole inch upward beneath you, its splintered tip grazing your flesh with a grinding insistence that sends a shiver of dread through your core. The coarse wood scraping against your back in a slow, deliberate ascent that promises deeper violation. The air around you thick with the sweltering heat of an Egyptian sun in the 17th century, heavy with dust and the faint, sickly, sweet stench of blood-soaked sand, mutating the parched earthiness from the Mughal plaza into a metallic tang that clings to your tongue like a rusted blade, forcing you to swallow dryly against the panic rising in your throat, each breath a laboured gasp that carries the sensory motif of frayed ropes from the keel hauling now transformed into the leather straps binding your wrists behind your back, chafing raw skin with every futile twist, while the tattered wool remnants, brittle from the elephant's heat, crumble further under the pressure of your prone position, exposing your torso to the abrasive ground that bites like a bed of hot coals, a sensory struggle that amplifies the splinter's prickling threat as it hovers beneath you, poised to pierce in this public square where crowds gather like vultures around a fresh kill. The year is roughly 1650 in an Ottoman-ruled Egypt where impalement was reserved for highway robbers and rebels, a spectacle of control etched into busy roadsides. The physical event unfolding as the executioner, a hulking figure with calloused hands, drives the pole deeper with a mallet's thud, the impact reverberating through the sand into your bones, each strike a pulse of pain that radiates from the point of contact, not yet breaking skin but bruising deep, the wood's greased surface smeared with animal fat to ease its passage. An absurd historical tidbit, as grotesque as it is practical sliding, with a slickness that makes your stomach lurch. The anticipation worse than the act itself. A horror rooted in the knowledge that this pole, as wide as a man's arm, aims to exit through your shoulder or mouth if driven far enough. Torchlight is absent here, replaced by the sun's relentless blaze, mutating from the watery shards of the ship into a golden inferno that sears your eyes and bakes the leather straps into stiff, cutting bands, casting harsh shadows of the pole and executioner across the crowd. Their faces a blur of morbid fascination under straw hats and turbans, the light glinting off the mallet's iron head like a cruel wink from fate. Historians debate whether impalement in Egypt was as widespread as European travellers claimed, some arguing 17th century accounts by figures like Jean de Thévenot exaggerated the practice to demonise Ottoman rule. But as the pole's tip presses harder, splitting skin with a sharp sting that draws a gasp, the scholarly dispute fades against the visceral reality, your body tensing instinctively to delay the inevitable, muscles screaming from the rack's prior stretch now compounded by this new, invasive agony. The shocking element emerges as you recall tales of Vlad the Impaler, not here but in 15th century Romania, whose forests of staked victims inspired Dracula myths. Yet Egypt's version was no less brutal. A highwayman in 1640 reportedly impaled shallowly to linger for hours, pleading to passers-by for water, a sad spectacle lightly dramatised in travellers' journals, where his cries haunted merchants for weeks. An injustice that makes your own position feel like a continuation of history's relentless script. The crowd's murmurs a chorus of indifference as the mallet rises again, the executioner's grunt mingling with the thud that drives the pole another inch, splitting flesh now with a warmth that trickles down your spine. The pain a white-hot flare that drowns your thoughts in static. Sarcasm flickers through the haze. Oh, what a charming roadside decoration. A medieval version of a warning sign, far worse than a speeding ticket sting in today's world, where fines bruise wallets, but here they shatter bodies. The crowd's gazes pinning you as surely as the pole, their whispers speculating on your crime, perhaps theft or rebellion, though the truth matters little in this theatre of deterrence. The absurd tidbit deepens. Executioners sometimes applied a paste of crushed herbs to the entry wound, not for healing but to stanch bleeding and prolong suffering, a leech-like remedy that mocked medicine in an age where pain was the currency of power. The paste's faint herbal scent now mingling with the blood's metallic reek, a nauseating blend that makes your head swim under the sun's glare. For a poetic zoom-out, the square stretches in your mind to the Nile's banks, a river of life and death where crocodiles lurk and empires clash, its waters carrying away the echoes of screams from countless stakes. A lyrical flow that widens your perspective from personal violation to the timeless currents of conquest and control, indifferent to the bodies left as signposts along the way. A modern comparison surfaces this impalement feels like being pinned in a surgical theatre gone rogue, the slow insertion of a needle without anaesthesia. But here the needle is wood, and the surgeons are executioners, no sterile tools but greased poles and calloused hands. The crowd's cheers a perverse applause for your endurance or demise. You writhe against the straps, the leather cutting deeper into your wrists, a futile struggle that only embeds the pole's tip further, the physical event escalating as the executioner pauses to adjust the angle, ensuring the stake avoids vital organs for now, a technique whispered among the crowd as a mark of skill, a surprising twist revisiting the rat dungeon's cunning smuggler here. A rebel in 1635 reportedly survived impalement by bribing an executioner to drive the stake shallow, living long enough to be cut down and flee. A tale some dismiss as Ottoman propaganda, but others cherish as defiance's flicker. Though for you, no bribe softens the mallet's rhythm. only the crowd's growing excitement as blood pools beneath you, the sand drinking it greedily under the sun's unyielding gaze. Light sarcasm bubbles up well. At least you're contributing to local decor, a living scarecrow for travellers. Better than a tacky souvenir statue that crumbles in time, though here the crumbling is your own flesh. The executioner's steady hand, a sculptor carving your end with methodical care. The historical fact weaves in impalement, banned in Egypt by the early 1700s under shifting Ottoman reforms, was often staged along trade routes to deter bandits, the bodies left for a day before removal to avoid pestilence, a practice that turned highways into galleries of terror, each stake a lesson etched in flesh for merchants and pilgrims alike. Academic uncertainty clouds the numbers. Did thousands meet this fate as travellers claimed? Or were the stakes fewer but amplified by fear-soaked tales? A debate that persists in archival letters, but offers no solace as the pole drives deeper. The pain now a roaring tide that threatens to sweep you under. The leather straps creaking under your spasms, the wool remnants fully disintegrated into dust that mingles with your blood, leaving you bare to the sun's heat and the sand's grind. The sun's blaze mutates into a molten curtain, its light refracting off sweat beads on your brow into blinding sparks, the metallic tang now overwhelming as you bite your lip, drawing fresh blood that trickles into the sand. A sensory motif converging in a storm of violation, the ropes burning, the sun searing, the stake grinding, and you feel the injustice like a fire in your chest. Not just your suffering, but the arbitrary cruelty that stakes the poor while sparing the powerful, echoing the tower's cells, the ship's keel, the elephant's foot, but uniquely invasive, a punishment that turns your body into a public monument of pain. For another zoom out, envision the desert beyond as a canvas of empire's ambitions, its sands swallowing the bones of rebels and rulers alike, a poetic dissolution where the stake's shadow stretches into eternity, shifting your focus to the human cost of control across centuries, indifferent to the cries that fade under blazing skies. The executioner raises the mallet once more, his eyes meeting yours for a fleeting moment, a strange visual image of shared humanity in a ritual of destruction. But the crowd's roar drowns any empathy, their anticipation a palpable weight that presses you deeper into the sand. What deeper breach will the next strike bring, as the pole's relentless rise promises a climax of agony under the desert's merciless sun? You feel the coarse leather sack constrict around you like a living thing, its thick, unyielding hide pressing against your bruised skin with a suffocating grip, the rough stitches scraping your arms and legs as you're shoved inside, the air within heavy with the musky stench of animal hide and your own fear sweat, mutating the metallic tang of blood from the impalement into a rancid, leathery bitterness that clogs your throat, forcing you to choke back shallow breaths that taste of confinement and dread. The sensory motifs of frayed ropes and tattered wool now replaced by the sack's coarse embrace, its texture grinding against the raw wounds from barnacles and stakes, each movement igniting fresh stings that ripple across your body like sparks on dry tinder. A sensory struggle that makes your heart race in the darkness of this Roman punishment from the 2nd century, revived in 18th century Germanic lands as pona cully, the penalty of the sack reserved for those who murdered kin. A crime deemed so heinous it demanded a death both intimate and theatrical. The year blurs to 1720 somewhere along the Rhine's muddy banks, where the crowd's murmurs filter through the leather like a distant storm, their voices tinged with both horror and fascination as you hear the frantic scrabbling of claws, not rats this time, but a bizarre menagerie of a dog, a rooster, a viper, and a monkey, stuffed into the sack with you, their panicked movements jostling against your sides, the dog's wet fur brushing your arm, the rooster's feathers tickling your neck, the viper's cold scales slithering across your leg, and the monkey's chattering teeth grazing your shoulder, a physical event that escalates as the sack is sewn shut with thick cord, each stitch tightening the seal, trapping you in a claustrophobic nightmare where the animal's terror mirrors your own, their claws and beaks adding chaotic scratches to your already battered frame, the air growing thinner with every passing second, heavy with the mingled odours of fur, feathers, and your own blood. Sunlight is gone, replaced by utter darkness within the sack, mutating the blazing desert glare into an oppressive void where no torchlight flickers, only the faint rustle of leather and the creature's frenzied movements creating a sensory illusion of lightless motion. as if the shadows themselves are clawing at you, the absence of vision amplifying every sound and touch into a cacophony of panic that drowns out the crowd's growing chants outside, urging the executioners to hurry toward the riverbank. Historians debate whether Ponacully's animals symbolize specific sins, dogs for loyalty betrayed, vipers for venomous intent, or were merely chosen for availability. A question muddied by sparse Roman records. But as the dog snaps at your arm, its teeth grazing skin without breaking it, the academic dispute feels irrelevant. The reality, a suffocating tangle of fur and scales that presses against you like a living wall, your chest heaving against the leather's unyielding pressure, each breath a struggle that draws in the acrid musk, now mutating into a nauseating blend of animal panic and your own exhaustion. The shocking element strikes as you recall a tale from 1710 whispered in German taverns of a man who killed his brother over a land dispute, sealed in a sack with these same creatures, his screams lasting only minutes before the river claimed him. A sad drama lightly etched in local annals where the animal's fates were mourned as much as the man's. An injustice that twists in your gut as the monkey's claws rake your thigh. Not malicious, but desperate, mirroring your own futile wriggles against the leather that feels like it's shrinking, crushing your ribs with every shift. Sarcasm bubbles through the haze. Oh, what a cozy family reunion, sharing a sack with creatures who did nothing to deserve this. Far worse than a crowded elevator stuck between floors, where at least the company is human and the weight finite. But here, the company is feral, and the end is a watery grave. The crowd's excitement a perverse soundtrack to your entrapment, their cheers muffled but piercing through the hide like distant taunts. The absurd historical tidbit emerges Roman executioners sometimes added a peacock to the sack for noble traitors, its vibrant feathers a mocking symbol of vanity and death, a leech-like flourish that prolonged suffering by clogging the sack's air further. A detail that makes your current companion seem almost merciful by comparison, though the viper's sudden hiss near your ear shatters that illusion, its cold body coiling against your calf, sending a shiver through your battered frame. For a poetic zoom-out, the sack becomes a microcosm of Rome's rigid justice, its leather walls a boundary between order and chaos, where the river outside waits to swallow the guilty and innocent alike. A lyrical tide that shifts your focus from the scratching chaos within to the eternal flow of waters that erase all crimes, indifferent to the lives they carry away. A modern comparison flickers. This entrapment feels like being locked in a malfunctioning escape room with rabid pets. No clues to unlock the exit, only the growing panic of dwindling air and clawing companions. The crowd outside betting on your survival like viewers of a grim reality show. The physical event escalates as the sack is lifted, swung roughly by executioners onto a cart, the jolt sending the animals into a frenzy, the rooster's beak jabbing your side with a sharp sting, the dog's paws scrambling across your chest, leaving welts that burn under the leather's grind, the sensory motifs converging in a storm of confinement, the leathery bitterness choking your throat, the wool scraps long gone, replaced by the sack's coarse hide that rubs your wounds raw, the darkness absolute but alive with motion, as if the void itself is clawing back. A surprising twist revisits the impalement's rebel survivor here. A rare account from 1725 tells of a woman who, condemned for poisoning her father, endured the sack long enough to be pulled from the river, revived by a compassionate fisherman who cut the leather open, a tale dismissed as folklore by some but cherished by others as proof of mercy's faint pulse. Though, for you, no such rescue looms. Only the carts rumble as it nears the river's edge, the animal's panic peaking as water's chill seeps through the leather's seams, promising a cold end. Light sarcasm surfaces well. At least you're not alone in this VIP death package, a group tour to oblivion, better than a solo plunge into a modern shark tank, where at least the predators are predictable. But here the chaos is intimate, the monkey's chatter turning to a scream that pierces your ears, amplifying the dread. The historical fact weaves in Poinacully, outlawed in Germany by 1800 after Enlightenment reforms, was often a choice over gladiatorial combat in Rome, where death by beasts was public but this was private, a punishment that hid its horror in leather but amplified it in isolation. The river's current a silent executioner that left no trace. Academic uncertainty clouds the animals' roles. Did they truly attack, or merely suffocate alongside the condemned. A debate in Roman legal texts that offers no comfort as the viper's scales slide across your arm, its potential bite a looming threat in the dark, the leather now damp with river water, tightening further as the cart halts, the crowd's roar swelling like a tidal wave. The sensory motifs intensify, the leathery bitterness now laced with the river's fishy tang, the darkness pulsing with animal heat. The sacks hide, a crushing cocoon, and you feel the injustice like a weight heavier than the water. Not just your fate, but the animal's undeserved doom. A punishment that spares the powerful, but traps the innocent in its net, echoing the tower's rats, the ship's barnacles, the elephant's foot. The stakes grind, but uniquely communal in its shared terror. For another zoom out, envision the Rhine as history's silent witness, its currents washing away Rome's laws and Germanic grudges alike. A poetic dissolution, where leather sacks sink into depths that erase all sins. Shifting your focus to the timeless waters that flow beyond human cruelty. The sack is tossed, the cold water shocking your skin through the seams, the animals thrashing in a final frenzy. Their claws and beaks a chaotic assault that merges with the river's pull. A strange visual image of sinking shadows in a watery void, the leather your only barrier against oblivion. What final struggle will the river demand? As the sack fills, and the darkness drowns all hope, you feel the heated bowl press against your bare stomach with a searing intensity that makes your skin blister on contact, the clay's rough edge digging into your flesh like a cruel embrace, trapping a frantic rat beneath it in a desperate bid for escape, its tiny claws scratching wildly as the coals on top warm the vessel to unbearable levels, sending waves of fiery discomfort radiating through your body, the creature's teeth nibbling tentative paths into your sweat-soaked skin, not yet burrowing but testing with sharp pricks that draw pinpricks of blood, a pain that starts as a localized burn but spreads like wildfire through your nerves, mutating the rancid leathery bitterness from the sack's confinement into an acrid smoke-tinged sharpness that fills your mouth as you bite down on a gag to stifle screams. The sensory motifs of flickering torchlight now revived in the glowing embers atop the bowl, casting erratic red hues across the dim chamber of a Dutch prison in 1568 during the 80 Years' War, where leader Diederik Sonoy pioneered this rat torture, the light mutating from the river's watery voids into a hellish glow that illuminates the interrogator's impassive face, his eyes reflecting the coal's heat like twin infernos, while the remnants of your wool tunic, long since stripped away in previous ordeals, leave you exposed to the chamber's draughty chill that contrasts sharply with the bowl's scalding touch, turning your sweat into a sticky film that slicks the rat's fur and makes its struggles more frantic. A sensory struggle where every twitch of the creature sends jolts of agony through your abdomen, your muscles tensing involuntarily against the restraints that pin you to a wooden bench, the coarse ropes chafing old wounds from the keel hauling and impalement, reopening scars that ooze warmth down your sides, blending with the rat's panicked scratches in a symphony of torment that makes your vision blur with tears that sting like acid in the smoky air. The physical event escalates as the rat, driven mad by the rising heat, begins to gnaw in earnest, its teeth sinking deeper into your flesh with a wet crunch that reverberates through your body, carving a path of fiery trails that feel like molten lava coursing under your skin. The bowl's clay now scorching hot against your belly, blistering the surrounding area into raw, weeping sores, the air thick with the scent of singed hair and cooking meat that turns your stomach, a horror rooted in this method's secrecy, often used on suspected spies or rebels. The interrogator leaning close to murmur questions about allegiances, his breath hot on your face like an extension of the coals, demanding confessions as the rat tunnels further, its tiny body writhing in panic that mirrors your own suppressed thrashings. Historians debate whether this torture was as effective as claimed or merely a psychological ploy, some arguing 16th century Dutch records exaggerated its use to intimidate Spanish forces, but as the rat's claws tear through layers of muscle, the dispute feels distant, the reality immediate and visceral, your breaths coming in ragged gasps that draw in the acrid smoke, now laced with the metallic tang of your own blood seeping from the burrowing sight. The torchlight's embers mutating into a pulsating red haze that dances across the chamber's stone walls. casting shadows of the interrogator that loom like elongated demons. The chill draft from cracks in the masonry, clashing with the bowl's heat to create a feverish disequilibrium that makes your head spin. Sweat pouring from your brow to mix with the tears streaming down your cheeks. A shocking element creeps in as you recall a nameless prisoner from 1572, subjected to this during the siege of Haarlem, who endured the rat's full burrow only to confess fabricated alliances. His body later found riddled with internal wounds that festered for days, a sad fate lightly dramatised in rebel pamphlets, where his false words spared comrades but doomed him to a slow death, an injustice that twists in your gut as the rat gnaws deeper, its teeth grazing nerves that send electric shocks through your limbs, leaving you to empathise with his broken spirit, the interrogator's questions blurring into white noise against the pain's roar, the chamber's air now heavy with the creature's squeaks and your muffled groans. Sarcasm whispers through the agony. What a clever pest control method, turning rats into unwilling surgeons, far worse than dealing with a mouse in your modern kitchen trap, where the snap is quick and humane, but here the excavation is prolonged and personal. The interrogator's tools a farce of ingenuity that prioritises suffering over truth, his face impassive as he adjusts the coals to heighten the heat, ensuring the rat's desperation peaks without killing it too soon. The absurd historical tidbit surfaces amid the haze. Some torturers used clay bowls etched with occult symbols, believing they channeled demonic forces to loosen tongues. A leech-like superstition that blended pagan rites with Christian zeal in a time when science bowed to fear, the symbols now faintly visible in the ember glow, adding a layer of eerie mysticism to the rat's frantic digs, its body heat blending with the bowl's scald to create a localized inferno on your stomach, sweat pouring in rivulets that sting the fresh tunnels, the metallic tang intensifying as you bite your gag harder, drawing blood that trickles down your chin. For a poetic zoom-out, the chamber expands in your mind to the war-torn Low Countries, a landscape of dikes and battles where rivers of blood fed the soil, the rat's burrow a microcosm of invasion's pierce, a lyrical intrusion that shifts your focus from bodily violation to the broader wounds of nations clashing in endless strife, indifferent to the individuals ground beneath their heels. A modern comparison flickers. This burrowing terror feels like a botched tattoo session where the needle goes rogue, carving unintended paths under your skin. But here there's no artist to blame, only the interrogator's calculated indifference. The pain a persistent throb that builds with each nibble, the rat's progress marked by the growing warmth of blood seeping outward, staining the bench beneath you. You arch against the restraints, the ropes grinding into your wrists with renewed bite, a futile bid to dislodge the bowl that only presses it firmer. The creature's squeals echoing your inner turmoil, the chamber's draught now carrying the scent of charred clay that mixes with your sweat, creating a nauseating vapour that makes your eyes water further, the ember light mutating into a steady crimson pulse that syncs with your heartbeat, illuminating beads of perspiration on the interrogator's brow, a sign that even he feels the heat's edge. A surprising twist revisits the smuggler's bone whistle from the rat dungeon, but mutated here whispers in Dutch prisons tell of a heretic in 1580 who, enduring this torture, hummed a lullaby through his gag that calmed the rat long enough for it to die of heat first, a tale some attribute to divine intervention, but others to sheer coincidence, a fleeting hope that flickers in your mind as you try to still your breaths, but the rat only burrows deeper, its claws tearing fresh paths that send jolts of fire through your abdomen, the pain cresting into a wave that threatens to pull you under. Light sarcasm emerges once more. Congratulations on the free acupuncture. Rodent style. Better than any trendy wellness trend that promises inner peace through needles. Though here the peace is oblivion and the needles are teeth. The interrogator's questions resuming with renewed vigour, demanding names that blur in your mind's fog, the metallic tang now overwhelming as blood from your bitten tongue mixes with sweat trickling into your mouth. The historical fact folds in naturally, this method, refined under Pinochet in 1970s Chile, with a rectal variant called the rectoscope, often left no external marks, allowing denials of torture in official records, a practice that turned interrogation into invisible art. The rat's exit sometimes through the chest or groin, prolonging agony for hours. Academic uncertainty surrounds its frequency. Did Sonoy use it on hundreds during the war? Or were the numbers inflated by propaganda to rally Dutch resistance? A debate in military histories that offers no balm as the rat finds a softer spot, its teeth sinking deeper with a wet tear that makes you convulse. The bowl's heat now blistering your skin into bubbles that pop with stinging clarity. The chamber's air thick with the scent of burning flesh, your vision narrowing to the ember's glow that seems to mock your endurance. The sensory motifs converge in a blaze, the metallic tang choking. The ropes grind unrelenting, the ember light a hellish beacon, and you feel the injustice like a deeper burrow. Not just your pain, but the systemic denial that allows such devices to persist across centuries, echoing the tower's rats but intensified by heat's cruel alchemy. A punishment that turns survival into a curse. The interrogator's shadow looming larger in the crimson haze. A strange visual image of a man eclipsed by his own fire. The rat's movements slowing as it tires or succumbs. But the damage done, leaving you hollowed and raw. What lingering tunnels will this terror carve in your spirit? As the bowl cools and new shadows gather in the chamber's depths, you hear the creak of iron bars closing around you with a finality that echoes like a distant gate slamming shut on freedom's last whisper. The cage's tight confines, forcing you into a hunched posture where your knees press against your chest and your head bows involuntarily. The cold metal biting into your back and thighs with a persistent chill that seeps through your ragged skin, mutating the acrid smoke-tinged sharpness from the rat's burrow into a frosty metallic tang that settles on your tongue like hoarfrost on forgotten steel. Each breath drawing in the wind-whipped air that carries the faint, salty bite of harbour mist from below. A sensory struggle where the bar's unyielding gridwork grinds against your bones with every sway of the gibbet, suspended 30 feet above the ground in an early 1900s Afghan marketplace, or perhaps a 17th century Boston harbour, where pirates and thieves met this elevated end. The wind howling through the gaps in the cage like mocking laughter, tugging at the scant remnants of your wool tunic now threadbare and stiff from repeated torments that flap uselessly against your exposed limbs, chilling them to numbness while the iron's cold radiates inward, turning your joints into aching knots that pulse with the rhythm of the swaying structure, as if the cage itself is alive and resentful of your presence within its skeletal frame. The year flickers to 1921 when National Geographic captured this barbarity in Afghanistan, or back to 1752 England after the Murder Act mandated gibbeting for killers. The physical event commencing as the cage is hoisted higher by creaking pulleys, the ground receding below in a dizzying drop that makes your stomach lurch, the wind intensifying its assault through the bars, whipping your hair across your face and carrying the pungent smells of rotting fish from the harbour or spices from the market, blending with the metallic tang now sharpened by the rust flaking from the bars onto your lips, the torchlight absent but echoed in the distant lanterns of passers-by below, mutating from the chamber's embers into faint, bobbing glows that cast elongated shadows of your caged form against the night sky, illuminating just enough to highlight the isolation, the vast emptiness around you, where birds circle curiously, their wings slicing the air with soft whooshes that mock your immobility. Historians debate whether gibbeting was more deterrent or mere spectacle, some arguing 18th century English records show over 134 confirmed cases post-Murder Act, while others claim the numbers were inflated to justify public cruelty in an era of rising crime. But as the cage sways precariously in a gust, creaking like old bones protesting movement, the scholarly contention fades against the immediate vertigo. The reality a suspended limbo where time stretches endlessly, your heart pounding against the bars that press into your ribs, each breath a laboured draw through wind-chapped lips that taste of rust and salt, the chill deepening as night falls, turning your exposed limbs into leaden weights that ache with the promise of frostbite, the iron's cold now mutating into a bone-deep freeze that wars with the residual burns from the bowl's heat, leaving you shivering uncontrollably in the cage's tight confines, unable to stand, sit straight, or lie down. A posture designed to erode will through discomfort alone. The shocking element descends as you think of a pirate in 1718 Boston, gibbeted alive at the harbour's mouth as a warning to incoming ships, his pleas for water ignored by sailors who filled their casks below, a sad tale lightly dramatised in colonial broadsheets where his body hung for years, rotting slowly while locals complained of the stench disrupting their sleep. an injustice that makes your own elevation feel like a cruel jest. The crowd below dispersing, but their occasional glances upward, piercing like arrows, reminding you that your suffering is public entertainment. The wind carrying snippets of their conversations, merchants haggling, children laughing that underscore your isolation. The bars grinding harder into your back as another gust rocks the cage, sending fresh jolts through your spine, the metallic tang intensifying as you lick your dry lips, drawing in flecks of rust that settle like bitter ash. Sarcasm whispers through the chill. What prime real estate, a penthouse view without the luxury, far worse than being stuck in a tiny elevator during a blackout, where at least the confinement is temporary and shared, but here it's solitary and eternal. The wind, your only companion, whipping through the bars with relentless glee, tugging at your hair and chilling your fingers until they numb. The cages sway a nauseating pendulum that makes your stomach roil, blending with the ache of cramped muscles that cramp and spasm in protest. The absurd historical tidbit surfaces amid the vertigo. Some gibbets were fitted with small seats inside, not for comfort, but to prevent the condemned from slipping through the bars in death. A leech-like contraption that prolonged the display by keeping bodies intact longer. A detail that makes your hunched position seem almost merciful by comparison, though the bar's cold bite disputes that, radiating frost that seeps into your core, turning shivers into uncontrollable tremors, the wind now carrying the faint rot of previous occupants, a ghostly whiff that mixes with the salty air, heightening the nausea as you fight to keep down bile that rises with each rock of the cage. For a poetic zoom-out, the gibbet towers in your imagination over the sprawling harbour or marketplace, a sentinel of society's fears where the sky meets the ground in a dance of judgment, its iron frame a lattice of human frailty against the vast heavens, a lyrical suspension that shifts your focus from bodily confinement to the endless expanse above, indifferent to the caged souls dangling like forgotten ornaments. A modern comparison flickers. This swaying isolation feels like being trapped in a faulty Ferris wheel at night. The view stunning, but the fear paralysing. No operator to call for help, just the wind's howl and the creak of metal that promises a fall if the chains give way. The crowd below now specks in the distance, their lives continuing while yours hangs in stasis, the chill deepening as stars emerge, their light cold and distant, mutating the daytime glare into a starry veil that offers no warmth, only a reminder of your elevation above the world yet utterly removed from it. You shift minutely, the bars grinding into new spots on your thighs, a futile bid for relief that only sparks fresh aches. The wind whistling through the gaps like a taunting melody, carrying the scent of salt and decay that settles on your skin, the metallic tang now laced with the bitterness of regret. Your breath shallow to avoid the cage's press on your chest, each inhale a victory against the constriction that threatens to crush your spirit before your body. A surprising twist revisits Anne Askew from the rack in the tower. Whispers in English gibbeting lore tell of a woman in 1550 inspired by Askew's defiance, who was caged alive for heresy but sang hymns that unnerved the guards, leading to her early release before rot set in. A tale some attribute to Protestant propaganda, but others to genuine mercy sparked by her voice echoing through the night. A fleeting hope that echoes in your mind as you try to hum softly, but the wind drowns it, leaving only the creak of iron and the numbness spreading through your limbs, the cage swaying like a pendulum counting down to exhaustion. Light sarcasm emerges again, talk about social distancing at its extreme, a high-rise quarantine without the Netflix, better than lockdown in a tiny apartment where boredom is the enemy, though here the enemy is exposure, the wind stripping away warmth and dignity in equal measure, the stars above twinkling like indifferent eyes, watching your slow unravelling. The chill now bone-deep, turning your fingers blue in the night's grip. The iron bars a cold lattice that imprints on your skin like a permanent tattoo of despair. The historical fact folds in naturally gibbeting, last documented in Afghanistan in 1921 via that infamous photo, often left bodies for decades in England, with one cage in Derbyshire holding remains for over 20 years before clean-up, a practice that turned landscapes into open-air morgues, the stench a constant reminder to locals of justice's lingering scent. Academic uncertainty clouds the efficacy. Did it truly deter crime as lawmakers claimed? Or did it breed resentment that fueled rebellions? a debate in criminology text that offers no warmth as the wind howls fiercer, rocking the cage with violent gusts that make your stomach drop. The bars grind, now a constant hum against your back, the metallic tang persisting as rust flakes into your open mouth during a yawn of fatigue. The starry light, faint but piercing, casting your shadow below as a distorted giant swaying in mockery. The sensory motifs converge in the night, the metallic tang chilling. The bars cold, unyielding. The winds whip a ceaseless assault and you feel the injustice like a weight heavier than the cage. Not just your isolation, but the public display that turns private suffering into communal warning, echoing the sack's chaos but elevated to spectacle. A punishment that dangles hope just out of reach. The ground below tantalizing yet unattainable. A strange visual image of a human birdcage silhouetted against the moon, its occupant a shadow puppet in the wind's play. What endless nights will this perch bring, as the cage sways and the chill whispers of breakdowns yet to come. You feel the sticky honey and milk coat your skin in a cloying layer that glistens under the Persian sun's unrelenting blaze, its sweetness turning treacherous as it seeps into every pore and crease, drawing a swarm of insects that buzz closer with insistent hunger. Their wings a humming chorus that prickles your ears like needles in the stifling heat of the ancient empire around 500 BCE, where scaphism was the fate for murderers in the Achaemenid courts, the mixture force-fed to you earlier now churning in your distended stomach, bloating you with a nauseating fullness that presses against your ribs, mutating the frosty metallic tang from the gibbet's iron bars into a sickly sweet residue that coats your tongue like overripe fruit rotting in your mouth. Each swallow a laboured effort against the gag reflex as diarrhea threatens to erupt. The sensory motifs of swaying confinement now revisited in the narrow boat where you're bound on your back, arms and legs protruding through holes cut in the hull, the vessel floating lazily on a stagnant lake surface, the water lapping gently at your limbs with a deceptive calm that belies the torment, while the remnants of your wool tunic, long since reduced to rags by previous horrors, dissolve further in the honey's viscous grip, clinging to your torso like a second, suffocating skin that attracts more flies and wasps, their tiny feet tickling your exposed flesh before their stings pierce with sharp jolts that radiate outward, blending with the sun's heat that bakes the mixture into a hardening crust, turning your body into a living lure for the lake's winged denizens. A sensory struggle where every buzz and bite amplifies the clammy unease pooling in your gut, the boat's gentle rock, a mocking lullaby that sways you between nausea and despair, the air thick with the hum of insects and the faint, fetid odour of your own impending filth as the milk-honey concoction works its laxative magic, drawing rodents and bees alike to the sweet foul banquet of your form. The physical event unfolds as the boat is pushed further into the lake's centre, the oarsman's grunts fading into the distance, leaving you isolated under the vast sky, the sun's glare mutating from the starry chill of the gibbet into a molten hammer that pounds down relentlessly, evaporating the lake's surface mist into steamy vapours that mingle with your sweat, the honey cracking slightly under the heat, only to attract more swarms, wasps landing on your eyelids with delicate precision, their stings swelling your vision into blurry slits, while flies cluster at your mouth and nostrils, crawling with itchy persistence that makes you twitch bound limbs futilely. Splashing water that cools momentarily but then warms to a tepid bath against your honeyed skin. The insect's bites now a constant prickling fire that spreads like wildfire across your chest and thighs, each one a tiny invasion that echoes the rat's burrow from the Dutch chamber, but amplified by the open air's exposure, the boat's wood creaking softly beneath you as if whispering secrets of previous victims who endured this for days. Their bodies documented in Persian chronicles as feasted upon until flesh rotted away filled with worms. Historians still argue whether scaphism was as prolonged as Plutarch described in his Lives of Artaxerxes, claiming one man lasted 17 days before succumbing, or if such accounts were exaggerated to portray Persian cruelty as barbaric to Greek audiences, but as a wasp burrows into the soft skin of your ear with a stinging probe, the debate dissolves into irrelevance, the reality your swelling agony, and the relentless buzz that drowns out all thought. The sun's heat now baking the honey into a caramelized shell that cracks with every involuntary shudder, releasing fresh scents that lure more bees from the lakeside reeds, their stings a symphony of fire that makes your muscles spasm against the boat's restraints. the water's lap now mutating into a teasing coolness against your protruding limbs that contrasts the torso's inferno, turning the ordeal into a dual torment of hot and cold, sweet and foul. A shocking element swims into focus as you recall Mithridates, the Persian soldier executed this way for assassinating Cyrus the Younger, his body force-fed and lathered daily to prolong the horror. His face eventually swarmed with wasps until it was unrecognisable, a sad saga lightly dramatised in ancient texts, where his 17-day survival was both a testament to resilience and a curse of extended suffering, an injustice that grips your heart as a rodent drawn by the diarrhea seeping from beneath you scrambles aboard the boat's edge, its whiskers twitching at the honeyed filth, nibbling at your exposed foot with tentative bites that send jolts up your leg, leaving you to empathise with Mithridates' isolation, adrift on a similar lake where the sun and swarms conspired to erase him slowly, the crowd long gone but their initial jeers echoing in memory like ghosts on the water. Sarcasm drifts through the haze of pain. What a luxurious float trip, all honey and spa treatments from nature's tiniest therapists, far worse than a bad sunburn on a lazy river raft, where aloe soothes the sting, but here the sting multiplies with every winged visitor. The boats rock a nauseating cradle that mocks any notion of relaxation. The insects hum, a constant reminder that you're the main course in this floating banquet, their proboscises probing like unwelcome guests at a party you never invited them to. The absurd historical tidbit bubbles up amid the swarm Persian executioners sometimes added aromatic herbs to the honey mixture, not for flavour but to attract specific insects believed to carry souls to the afterlife. A leech-like ritual blending Zoroastrian beliefs with cruelty in an era where death was a doorway adorned with torment. The herb's faint floral note now mingling with the decay rising from your body, heightening the allure for bees that cluster thicker on your chest, their stings a rhythmic puncture that swells your flesh into throbbing mounds. The sun's glare now mutating into a hazy veil, as sweat and tears blur your vision. The water's cool lap against your hands, a cruel tease that evaporates quickly in the heat, leaving salt crystals that chafe the honeyed crust. For a poetic zoom-out, the lake stretches in your mind to the vast Persian plateau, a mirror of empire's reflections where rivers fed gardens above while devouring the condemned below. Its glassy surface a canvas of solitude where human ingenuity paints with pain, a lyrical ripple that shifts your gaze from the buzzing horde to the timeless waters that cradle history's forgotten floats, indifferent to the feasts they host. A modern comparison surfaces as a fly crawls into your nostril, its wings buzzing internally like a trapped alarm. This floating torment feels like being slathered in bait for a survival show gone wrong, adrift on a raft with no rescue helicopter in sight, where bugs are the stars and you're the unwilling contestant. The sun's heat a spotlight that amplifies every bite into a spectacle of endurance. No commercial breaks to ease the itch that spreads like wildfire across your skin. The boat's gentle sway now a hypnotic rhythm that lulls you toward delirium, the insects' numbers growing as word spreads on the wind. Their stings a cumulative fire that burns without consuming, leaving welts that throb in time with your pulse. You twitch against the bindings, splashing water that scatters a few flies momentarily, a futile gesture that only stirs the honey's scent anew, drawing back the swarm with renewed vigour, the rodent now bolder, its teeth gnawing at your toe with a grinding persistence that sends shooting pains up your leg. A revisitation of the rat dungeon scurries, but with a surprising twist. Ancient accounts whisper of a condemned scribe who, in a similar boat, recited poetry that allegedly calmed the insects, allowing him to survive an extra day before the guards returned with fresh latherings. A tale some attribute to hallucinatory fever, but others to the power of words in a world where silence meant surrender, though for you no verses come, only gasps as a wasp stings your lip, swelling it into a throbbing barrier that muffles your pleas, the lake's water now warming under the sun's peak, turning the boat into a floating oven where honey bakes and insects thrive. The sweet residue cracking further to release sticky rivulets that trail down your sides, pooling in the hull and attracting ants that march across your chest in itchy lines, their bites tiny but cumulative, adding to the wasp's fire and the rodent's gnaw. The sun's glare now a blinding white that forces your eyes shut, trapping you in a red-tinged darkness where sounds amplify the buzz a roar, the lap a slap, the gnaw a crunch that echoes in your skull. The injustice ferments like the mixture in your gut. Not just your suffering, but the deliberate prolongation, a punishment that feeds on time as much as flesh, echoing the gibbet's sway, but immersed in liquid isolation, a fate where nature becomes the executioner. The guard's daily returns with more honey, a ritual of extension that turns days into eternities. The swarm now a living blanket that crawls and stings without pause, their wings fanning the heat into waves that make your skin crawl literally and figuratively. The water's cool tease against your limbs, a mocking contrast to the torso's inferno, where diarrhea finally erupts in a humiliating flood that mixes with the honey, drawing yet more rodents from the shore, their splashes announcing new arrivals that clamber aboard, their teeth joining the feast with eager chomps that tear small chunks from your extremities. The pain a diffuse throb that blends into a constant hum of agony. The boats rock now a nauseating cradle that lulls you toward unconsciousness, only to jolt you awake with a fresh sting. The sweet residue now fermented under the sun into a pungent syrup that attracts hornets with their deeper buzz and sharper venom. Their attacks a punctuation to the fly's constant harassment, swelling your face into a mask of lumps that distort your features. The lake's isolation absolute. No crowd to witness but the indifferent reeds rustling in the breeze, a wind that carries pollen and more insects to the party, turning your body into a blooming garden of welts and bites. The rodents gnaw progressing to your calf with a grinding persistence that makes you kick weakly, splashing water that scatters a few but invites others. The sun dipping slightly but its heat lingering in the air like a breath held too long. The honey's crust now a cracked landscape where ants tunnel and bees harvest. Their activities a microcosm of the larger torment. The water's lap now warmer, carrying away flecks of skin and blood in lazy eddies that attract fish to nibble at your dangling fingers. Their mouths a soft but insistent tug that adds to the layered pains. The swarm's hum now a white noise that drowns thought, leaving only sensation the sting, the bite, the gnaw, the rock in an endless cycle that erodes your will like the lake's waves against the boat's hull. The mutated motifs converging in this floating hell, the sweet tang choking, the iron absent but echoed in the blood's coppery undercurrent, the torchlight replaced by the sun's fading gold that paints the lake in amber hues, casting your honeyed form as a glowing bait in the twilight for another poetic zoom-out. The lake becomes a mirror to the cosmos, its surface reflecting stars emerging like distant witnesses to earthly cruelties, a lyrical expanse where human invention meets nature's indifference, shifting your delirium to the vast night sky that arches above, uncaring of the feasts below. The moderner side drifts in as a hornet stings your neck, its venom burning like fire. This is worse than a bad picnic invaded by ants, where you can swat and flee, but here you're the table, immobilized and served up for an eternal buffet. No repellent spray to ward off the horde, just the guard's promise of tomorrow's lathering to reset the cycle. The rodent now joined by a companion that scrambles over the boat's edge. Their combined gnaws a duet of agony that makes you arch against the bindings. The honey's sweetness now a curse that lures without end. The lake's water reflecting the first stars in rippled fragments that mock your fragmentation. A strange visual image of a body dissolving into the night. The swarm a living constellation orbiting your fading form. What deeper erosion will dawn bring, as the insects settle for the night, and the chill whispers of survival stretch too thin, you feel the stone walls close in around you, with an unyielding pressure that makes the air itself seem to thicken into a tangible shroud, swallowing every echo of your ragged breaths in the eternal darkness of the oubliette, where forgotten prisoners were tossed like discarded rags into these pit-like chambers across medieval Europe, over half of them starving within a week according to sparse castle records that hint at thousands vanishing without trace. Could you claw your way through the silence before madness claims you first? The musty rot of old bones assaults your nostrils immediately, a dank, earthy decay that seeps from the floor where skeletal remains crunch under your bare feet, like brittle leaves in an autumn forgotten by time, each step stirring up dust that coats your throat with a gritty film, mutating the sickly sweet residue from the honeyed lake into a choking mouldiness that tastes of centuries-old despair on your tongue, forcing you to retch dryly against the nausea rising from your empty stomach. The sensory motifs of flickering torchlight now absent, but echoed in the absolute blackness that presses against your eyes like velvet weights, mutating from the starry chill of the gibbet into a void so complete it feels like being buried alive while still breathing, while the iron on your teeth, remnants from chains long since removed, now manifests as the faint metallic tang of blood from cracked lips, blending with the rot to create a flavour of utter abandonment, the wet wool long gone but its memory lingering in the clammy dampness that slicks the stone walls, condensing into droplets that trickle down your back like cold fingers tracing your spine, a sensory struggle where hunger gnaws at your insides like a silent thief, not a sharp pain, but a hollow ache that weakens your limbs and blurs your thoughts, making every movement a laboured effort against the chamber's confining dimensions, too low to stand fully, too narrow to lie flat, forcing you into a fetal curl on the uneven floor where jagged rocks jab into your hips and shoulders, amplifying the bruises from the sack's thrashings, and the bowl's burns into throbbing reminders of accumulated torments. The physical event begins as you grope blindly along the walls, your fingers scraping against rough stone etched with faint scratches from previous occupants, perhaps desperate messages or tallies of days lost to oblivion, the contact drawing fresh stings from your nail-bitten hands, the darkness so profound it disorients, making you stumble over a pile of bones that clatter like dice in a gambler's den, one femur rolling against your ankle with a dull thud that sends a chill up your leg, the air stagnant and heavy with the odour of mildew and decomposition. Each inhale a burden that fills your lungs with invisible spores that irritate your throat into coughing fits that echo faintly before being absorbed by the stone. The oubliette's name, French for to forget, a cruel irony, as you're left here in Warwick Castle's depths, or perhaps Leap Castle in Ireland, where renovations in 1900 uncovered chambers crammed with hundreds of skeletons. The year now timeless in this underground vault, the wind absent but the chill pervasive, seeping from the stone into your bones like ink into paper, turning your shivers into uncontrollable tremors that rattle against the walls. The hunger now a growling void that twists your gut, sapping strength as days blend into an endless night. The isolation absolute save for the occasional skitter of rats familiar from the dungeon's horrors that nibble at the edges of the bone pile, their tiny eyes glinting in imagined light. A revisitation of the tower's rat dungeon, but with a surprising twist here, in Leap Castle's chapel oubliette, legends whisper of a priest who survived months by catching and eating the rats raw, his faith sustaining him until rescuers breached the wall. A tale some dismiss as ghostly folklore, but others uphold as testament to spiritual endurance in Ireland's turbulent 16th century. Though for you no such sustenance appears, only the gnawing emptiness that makes your stomach cramp in waves. The stone's cold now mutating into a numbing frost that creeps up your limbs, dulling sensation while heightening the psychological toll. The darkness a canvas where hallucinations paint visions of past figures like Anne Askew, her dislocated form appearing in the void, whispering encouragements that dissolve into echoes, shifting your delirium from physical hunger to a haunting communion with the forgotten. A shocking element materializes in the form of a rotting skull you bump against, its empty socket seeming to stare back in the blackness, belonging perhaps to a rival noble tossed here in 1450 for treason, his body left to moulder beside predecessors, a sad accumulation lightly dramatized in castle ledgers where multiple occupants shared the space, their decompositions a communal decay that poisoned the air for newcomers, an injustice that pierces your fading resolve as you realize this chamber hasn't been cleaned in decades. The bones are testament to serial neglect, the musty rot now so pervasive it feels like breathing through a grave, the hunger's thief, stealing not just energy but memories, blurring the line between wakefulness and fevered dreams where you relive the rack's stretch or the sack's chaos, each phantom pain a echo that makes you curl tighter, the stone floor unyielding against your spine, jabbing protrusions that mimic the stake's grind without the finality, the air now laced with your own unwashed scent that mingles with the decay into a personal miasma of defeat. Sarcasm flickers dimly in your thoughts. Oh, what a minimalist retreat, all-inclusive with vintage decor and a bone collection to die for. Far worse than a budget hotel room with lumpy beds and no room service, where at least you can complain or check out, but here checkout is death's prerogative. The oubliette hotel where guests never leave, the silence broken only by your weakening breaths and the occasional rat scurry. a companion you'd welcome for sustenance, if not for the revulsion twisting your empty gut. The cold now a blanket that smothers rather than comforts, turning shivers into convulsions that rattle the bones nearby, stirring dust that settles on your skin like a shroud, the metallic tang persisting as you lick cracked lips, drawing in flecks of rust from imagined chains, the darkness so complete it presses inward, birthing visions of light that aren't there, phantom torches flickering in your mind's eye to mock the void. The absurd historical tidbit emerges from the haze some oubliettes were fitted with narrow slits for dropping minimal food scraps, not for mercy but to prolong suffering as a twisted form of entertainment for castle lords, a leech-like extension of life that turned starvation into a spectator sport in feudal times, the slits here absent or sealed, leaving you to wonder if a crumb might fall like manna, but only silence answers. The hunger now a roaring void that consumes thought, reducing you to base instincts where even the rats seem appetizing. Their scurries a teasing proximity that makes you reach out blindly, fingers brushing fur that darts away, leaving you emptier, the stone's chill now mutating into a feverish paradox where cold sweats bead on your brow despite the numbness. The musty rot now a companion that invades your dreams, turning sleep into nightmares of feasts denied. For a poetic zoom-out, the oubliette plunges in your delirium to the earth's core, a pit where history's discarded souls gather in silent congress, their bones a mosaic of era's cruelties, a lyrical descent that widens your fading awareness to the planet's hidden voids, indifferent to the lives they entomb, shifting the isolation from personal to cosmic, a speck in the darkness of forgotten depths. A modern comparison drifts in as a rat brushes your hand again, its warmth a cruel tease like scrolling through food pics on an empty stomach during a diet. Where temptation is digital, but here it's tangible, the hunger, a slow erosion that mirrors fasting trends gone extreme. No wellness guru to guide you through, just the void's patient wait for your surrender. The stone walls now seeming to pulse with the rhythm of your weakening pulse, the metallic tang fading as dehydration dries your mouth into parchment. The darkness, a velvet curtain that parts occasionally for hallucinations of escape, doors that vanish upon approach, leaving you curled tighter, the bones underfoot a bed of reminders that company in death is no comfort, the chill now a whisper that lulls towards stupor, the musty rot a lullaby of decay that sings of ends without fanfare. The historical fact seeps in like the damp oubliettes in Leap Castle, yielded carloads of skeletons in 1900, some with spikes at the bottom for quicker kills, a detail that makes your bone-strewn floor seem almost kind, though the starvation's slow theft disputes that, turning days into an eternity where time loses meaning. The academic uncertainty surrounding their use, were they for quick forgetting or deliberate lingering, a debate in castle archaeology that echoes in the void without resolution, as hunger's thief steals another sliver of strength, leaving you weaker, the rats bolder, their nibbles now on the edges of your consciousness. A strange visual image of shadowy forms circling in the black, their eyes glinting like stars in an underground sky, the psychological chill deepening as realization dawns that forgetting is mutual, you forgotten by the world, and the world fading from your mind. What final surrender will the darkness demand, as the bones whisper secrets, and the void beckons with silent arms? You sense the echoing screams multiply around you like shadows birthing from the void, each wail a fractured memory clawing its way into your consciousness, building into a cacophony that drowns the silence of the oubliette, where over 80% of medieval prisoners reportedly lost their minds before their bodies gave out. According to fragmented castle logs that detail hallucinations as the true killer in these pits, could you distinguish your own voice from the chorus before it shatters your sanity entirely? The thickening air of despair presses against your chest like a weighted blanket woven from regret, heavy with the musty rot of bones that now seems to pulse with life, their skeletal fingers brushing your ankles in the blackness that feels alive, stirring dust that coats your lungs with a gritty veil, mutating the choking mouldiness from the chamber's depths into a suffocating fog laced with the faint acrid whisper of smoke from imagined torches. The iron on your teeth now a phantom grind that tastes of rusted blood mixed with the earthy decay rising from the floor. Each inhale a laboured drag that fills your mouth with the flavour of centuries' worth of anguish. the sensory motifs converging in this climax of torments, where the flickering torchlight from distant hallucinations dances on the walls like elusive fireflies, mutating from the ember's crimson pulse of the rat bowl into spectral flames that illuminate visions of past victims materializing around you, their faded pleas merging with your own ragged breaths that escape in short, desperate bursts. The stone floor beneath you, now a bed of jagged remnants that jab into your spine with renewed viciousness, amplifying the hollow ache of hunger into a symphony of physical frailty that makes your limbs tremble uncontrollably, the dampness on the walls condensing into rivulets that trickle down your neck like cold sweat from a fever dream, blending with your own perspiration to create a clammy film that slicks your skin, turning every shift a slippery battle against the chamber's unyielding grip, as if the oubliette itself is squeezing the last vestiges of resistance from your weary frame. The physical event surges as the visions solidify. Anne Askew from the rack's creaking horrors reappearing first, her dislocated limbs twisting unnaturally in the spectral light, whispering accusations that blend with the boy's cries from the rat dungeon, his loaf-stealing plea now a guttural echo that ricochets off the stones, joined by the sailor's scarred form from the keel-hauling, his barnacle-raked back oozing phantom blood that drips onto your shoulder with a warm splatter that feels all too real, the sensory struggle intensifying as these apparitions crowd closer, their collective pains layering onto yours, the stretch of the rack pulling at your joints anew. The barnacles slice reopening scars on your back, the elephant's thunderous foot compressing your chest until breaths come in wheezes. The stakes grind, piercing your core with a phantom thrust that makes you arch in agony. The sack's frantic claws scratching your sides as if the animals have escaped their watery grave to join this reunion. The rat's burrow reigniting fire in your abdomen, the gibbets sway, dizzing your head with vertigo even on solid ground, and the honeyed swarm's stings prickling your skin like invisible needles, all converging in a whirlwind of phantom torments that assault every nerve. The air now thick with their collective rot and sweat, a miasma that tastes of mingled blood and decay on your parched tongue, the iron's tang sharpening into a blade that slices through the hallucinations, making you question if this climax is delusion, or the oubliette's cruel design to replay history's cruelties in your fracturing mind. The stone walls seeming to close tighter, their damp chill mutating into a feverish heat that flushes your cheeks, while the spectral torchlight flares brighter, illuminating faces twisted in eternal anguish that mirror your own contorted expression. The hunger's void, now filled with this overwhelming surge that threatens to burst your sanity like an overripe fruit under pressure. A factual moment of history folds in as you recall the Warwick Castle oubliette, where prisoners like rival knights in the 1400s were forgotten for months, their bodies piling up until the pits overflowed, a practice that turned these chambers into mass graves hidden beneath grand halls. The visions now including those knights, their armoured remnants clanking faintly in the dark as they join the chorus, their pleas for ransom unpaid blending with your silent begs for release. An ironic modern aside slipping through the chaos. This overload of ghosts feels like doom scrolling through a horror feed at 3 over, where each swipe brings a new nightmare that piles on until sleep flees forever. Far worse than binge-watching true crime docs that leave you paranoid, but allow the pause button. Here, there's no escape from the relentless replay. The apparition's touch is now tangible. Cold hands grasping your arms, hot breaths on your neck, their collective weight pressing you down into the bone-strewn floor that shifts like a living bed. The musty rot intensifying into a perfume of death that makes your eyes water with phantom tears, the iron's tang now laced with the salty bite of blood from lips bitten raw in silent screams. The shocking element crescendos as a new vision emerges. Joannes Sonaris' documented account from Byzantine times of a man in a similar pit who clawed at the walls until his fingers bled to stumps, his madness manifesting as conversations with the dead that drove him to self-cannibalism before starvation claimed him, a sad descent lightly dramatised in medieval manuscripts, where his final ravings were recorded as prophecies by superstitious guards, an injustice that pierces your core as the visions mimic this, the boy's skeletal hand offering a bone shard as if to eat, Anne's twisted form urging you to confess sins never committed, the sailor's scarred lips whispering of treasures in the depths, their collective madness infecting yours, making you laugh hysterically in the dark, a sound that bounces off the stones like breaking glass. the damp chill now a fever sweat that slicks your body, turning the floor's jagged rocks into slippery hazards that cut fresh gashes on your knees as you scramble away from the phantoms, the air thickening further into a soup of whispers that drown your thoughts, the hunger's thief now stealing reason alongside strength, leaving you babbling incoherently to shadows that respond with echoes of your own voice twisted into accusations. A moment of light sarcasm bubbles through the delirium talk about a crowded therapy session with history's worst patients, unpacking traumas you never asked for, far worse than a group chat blowing up with unsolicited advice at midnight, where you can mute the noise, but here, the volume only rises. The visions please now a deafening roar that pounds in your skull like a migraine from hell, the iron's tang sharpening as you bite your tongue in confusion, drawing real blood that tastes of finality amid the chaos, the spectral torchlight flaring into a blinding white that consumes the darkness, mutating into explosions of colour that paint the walls with scenes. From each punishment the racks creak, the waves crash, the elephants thud, the stakes grind, the sacks thrash, the rats nibble, the gibbets sway, the honeys buzz, all overlapping in a kaleidoscope of suffering that threatens to shatter your mind's fragile glass. The stone walls now pulsing like a heartbeat, closing in with rhythmic squeezes that match your frantic pulse. The musty rot now a living entity that crawls into your nostrils like smoke from an unseen fire. The hallucinations reaching a fever pitch where the victim's forms merge into a single, monstrous entity that looms over you, its many mouths whispering your name in unison. A psychological chill that freezes your blood despite the fever's heat, making you curl tighter into the fetal position. The bones around you rattling as if joining the dance. Their clatter's a percussion to the scream's melody. The air so thick it's like breathing underwater without the water's buoyancy. Each gasp of victory snatched from the void's greedy maw. An absurd, fascinating historical tidbit pierces the madness some oubliettes were built with false doors painted on the walls, not for escape, but to drive prisoners insane with hope's illusion. A leech prescription of psychological cruelty that turned minds into labyrinths before bodies failed. The visions now incorporating these doors, glowing temptingly in the spectral light, only to dissolve upon approach, leaving you scrambling on hands and knees that bleed from the rocky floor. The iron's tang now a constant companion as rust from imagined chains flakes into your open wounds, the chill mutating into a burning fever that flushes your skin while hallucinations of the honey swarm return, insects crawling from the bone pile to join the fray, their phantom stings prickling your arms as the rat from the bowl burrows anew in your gut's empty void, the sack's animals manifesting as spectral beasts that nip at your heels, the elephant's foot pressing down from above in a crushing weight that isn't there, the stake rising from the floor to prod your back, the killhauling's waves flooding the chamber in illusory torrents that soak you without wetness, the gibbet's sway rocking the oubliette like an earthquake. All torments converging in this dramatic peak where your body convulses under the assault, screams escaping your lips to join the echo, merging into a single, unending wail that vibrates the stones, the air now a whirlwind of whispers and winds that tear at your sanity. The sensory overload, a blaze that threatens to consume you entirely, the vision's faces now your own reflected in infinite mirrors of pain, a strange visual image of fractured selves splintering into the darkness, the psychological chill deepening into an abyss where identity dissolves, leaving only the raw nerve of existence screaming against the void. What shattering revelation will this convergence birth as the screams reach their zenith and the darkness pulses with the promise of a breaking point? You sense the breaking point shatter your resolve like fragile glass under an invisible hammer, each crack spider-webbing through your mind as the accumulated torments converge in a whirlwind of phantom pains that assault you from all sides. Over 70% of medieval torture survivors reportedly descending into permanent madness, according to fragmented accounts from inquisitorial records that detail how repeated traumas fractured psyches beyond repair. Could you hold on to the last thread of sanity as the echoes of every horror roar back in unison, demanding surrender? The metallic tang of fear overwhelms your senses in a final surge, flooding your mouth with a sharp, coppery bitterness that tastes like blood from wounds long healed, yet reopened in hallucination, mutating the mouldy decay from the oubliette's depths into a choking vapour that seeps into every pore, blending with the sweat beading on your forehead in cold rivulets that trickle down your temples like tears from unseen eyes. the sensory motifs of flickering torchlight now exploding into a chaotic blaze within your skull, mutating from spectral flames into blinding bursts that illuminate visions of the rack's creaking ropes pulling at your joints anew. The barnacle's razor slices reopening across your back with fresh stings that burn like acid under saltwater's phantom splash. The elephant's massive foot descending once more to compress your chest, until breaths come in wheezing gasps that echo the sack's frantic claws, raking your sides as if the animals have clawed their way free from the river's depths to join this frenzy. The snake's grinding thrust piercing your core with a slow twist that makes you arch against the stone floor. The rat's burrowing teeth gnawing tunnels through your abdomen in fiery paths that radiate outward. The gibbet's swaying vertigo spinning the chamber into a nauseating whirl that blurs the walls into a vortex. The honeyed swarm's stings prickling your skin in 1,000 points of fire as insects crawl from the bone pile to feast again. All these pains layering upon one another in a symphony of agony that makes your body convulse uncontrollably. Muscles spasming as if electrocuted by invisible currents. The damp chill of the walls now mutating into a feverish heat that flushes your skin while hallucinations grip tighter. The air thickening into a soup of screams where Anne Askew's dislocated form twists before you. With a surprising twist, she reaches out not in accusation but in solidarity. Her whispered prayers now a garbled chant that blends with the boy's loaf-stealing cries from the rat dungeon, evolving into a harmonious dirge that includes the sailor's scarred pleas from the keel-hauling, the highwayman's final gasp from the impalement, the heretic's hummed lullaby from the rat bowl, all figures revisiting this climax with faces morphed into your own, reflecting back a fractured self that mocks your endurance, their collective voices a roar that pounds in your ears like thunder trapped in a bottle, the stone floor beneath you shifting as if alive, bones rattling into animated skeletons that claw at your ankles with bony fingers that feel cold as the gibbet's bars, drawing fresh scratches that ooze warmth down your legs. The hunger's void now filled with this overwhelming deluge that threatens to burst your veins, each phantom pain a lightning strike that arcs through your nerves, making your limbs jerk in uncoordinated dances against the unyielding stone. The musty rot now a living fog that crawls into your nostrils like smoke from a pyre, carrying the sense of burned flesh from the rack's aftermath, salt water from the ship's hull, dust from the elephant's plaza, herbal paste from the steak, animal musk from the sack, charred clay from the bowl, harbour wind from the cage, fermented honey from the boat, all odours converging into a nauseating perfume that turns your stomach inside out. Dry heaves racking your frame as the visions intensify, the interrogators from each torment merging into a single hooded figure that looms over you, mallet in one hand, rope in another, prod in a third. Their questions a babble of demands that blend into white noise, accusing you of crimes you never committed yet feel guilty for in this madness, the injustice swelling like a tumour in your chest. Not just your suffering, but the systemic cruelty that wove these punishments into history's fabric, turning human lives into threads snapped for sport or spectacle. A sad culmination lightly dramatised in your fracturing mind where the victim's stories intertwine with yours, creating a tapestry of shared despair that weighs heavier than any chain. The air now pulsing with their breath sinking to yours, hot and ragged, the damp walls sweating beads that drip onto your forehead like accusatory tears, the iron's tang sharpening into a symphony of flavours: blood, rust, salt, sweetness, rot, all assaulting your taste buds in a chaotic blend that makes you gag anew, the sensory overload peaking as the hallucinations reach out with tangible hands, pulling at your hair, pinching your skin, whispering names of loved ones lost to time's indifferent march. A psychological chill that freezes your core despite the fever's blaze, making you shiver violently against the stone that now feels like a bed of nails driven by the stake's mallet, each prick a echo of the swarm's stings, the wind from the gibbet howling through invisible cracks to rock you like the boat's sway, the elephant's trunk curling around your throat in a phantom squeeze that chokes your breaths into wheezes, the sack's animals manifesting as spectral beasts that nip and scratch in the dark, the rat emerging from your abdomen in a writhing birth that tears fresh fire through your gut, the keel-hauling's waves crashing over you in dry floods that drown without water, the rack's ropes stretching your limbs until they pop in auditory hallucinations that crack like thunder in your skull. All torments breaking free from memory to assault in real time, your body a battlefield where history's weapons clash in endless war. The vision's face is now a swirling vortex that sucks you toward its centre, their eyes hollow pits that reflect your own terror back at you. A mirror of madness that shatters with a psychic snap that reverberates through your being. The air now a whirlwind of dust and decay that spins like a tornado in the confined space, lifting bone fragments that pelt your skin like hail from a storm brewed in hell. The musty rot intensifying into a gaseous poison that burns your lungs with each gasp. The iron's blade taste now slashing your throat from within as if swallowing shards. The damp chill and fever heat colliding in a storm front that racks you with alternating shivers and sweats. The stone walls closing in tighter as if the oubliette is collapsing under the weight of accumulated sins. Cracks appearing in hallucination that spill light from non-existent sources, illuminating the victim's forms in grotesque detail. Hands' joints twisting like vines. The boy's emaciated frame crumbling to dust. The sailor's barnacle-encrusted skin flaking away. The highwayman's stake protruding like a thorn. The heretic's burrow holes oozing spectral pus. The murderer's animals gnawing at his translucent flesh. The thief's crushed bones reassembling only to fall apart. The scribe's poetry turning to screams that harmonise with yours. All breaking apart and reforming in a cycle of destruction that mirrors your shattering resolve. The injustice exploding into a rage that fuels the chaos. A fury at the whims of emperors and inquisitors who scripted these pains without consequence. Their faces now joining the vortex as laughing spectres that taunt your endurance. The sensory assault reaching its zenith where pains no longer separate but fuse into a single, white-hot entity that consumes your awareness. Hallucinations now tactile beyond doubt. Hands pulling, teeth biting, ropes stretching, weights crushing, stakes piercing, claws scratching, stings burning, winds swaying, waters drowning, all in a maelstrom that spins you into oblivion's maw. The air a roaring gale that deafens, the metallic tang a flood that drowns your senses, the darkness lightening into a blinding white that promises release or ruin, the stone floor rising to meet the walls in a collapsing embrace that crushes without touch. The vision's chorus a final scream that shatters the blade in your throat into fragments that pierce your mind. A strange visual image of yourself splintering into infinite shards reflecting every torment back in an eternal loop. The psychological chill deepening into a frozen abyss where resolve crumbles like the bones underfoot, leaving only the raw echo of a question hanging in the fractured void. What remains when the whirlwind subsides, as the shards settle and the silence returns with a mood of fragile calm. You feel the whirlwind of phantom pains begin to unravel, the shards of torment settling like dust after a storm, each fragment of agony fading into a dull throb that lingers in your bones, as if the oubliette itself exhales a sigh of reprieve, its stone walls no longer pulsing but standing still in the oppressive dark, where over 90% of prisoners reportedly succumb to despair before starvation. According to whispered tales in medieval chronicles, could you find a crack in this historical veil to grasp at fleeting hope? Or will the silence swallow you whole? The air softens slightly, its choking mouldiness easing into a stale, earthy dampness that coats your throat less harshly, mutating the overwhelming metallic tang of fear into a quieter, coppery whisper that lingers on your cracked lips. The taste of blood now faint like a memory of the rack's grind or the stake's pierce, while the sensory motifs of flickering torchlight flicker once more in your mind's eye, not as blazing hallucinations but as soft glimmers filtering through imagined cracks in the stone above, mutating from the chaotic white blaze of the climax into tentative beams that dance like hesitant fireflies, illuminating the bone-strewn floor with a ghostly glow that reveals the skeletal remains not as threats but as silent companions, their jagged edges softened in the dim light, no longer jabbing your skin but cradling your curled form with a strange gentleness, the damp chill of the walls now mutating into a cool caress that soothes the fevered sweat on your brow. Though the hunger's hollow ache persists, gnawing at your insides with a subdued insistence that makes your limbs tremble faintly, each movement a cautious test against the oubliette's confines, where the absence of ropes, chains, or honey feels like an unexpected mercy. Yet the isolation wraps you tighter than any leather sack, the air heavy with the musty rot that clings to your nostrils, though less suffocating now, as if the chamber is loosening its grip, allowing a sliver of clarity to pierce the fog of delirium that gripped you moments ago, the visions of Anne Askew, the boy, the sailor, and others fading into translucent echoes that hover at the edges of your perception, their screams muted into soft murmurs that blend with the distant drip of water somewhere in the dark, a sound that grounds you in this fragile moment of decline, where the body's torments ebb but the mind teeters on the brink of surrender, the stone floor beneath you now a steady anchor despite its cold, its rocky protrusions no longer stabbing but supporting your weakened frame like a reluctant friend. The sensory struggle shifting from violent assault to a quiet endurance of hunger and cold that feels almost meditative in its monotony. The oubliette's darkness now less oppressive, its void a canvas where faint hopes flicker like the glimmers above, suggesting cracks in the historical veil that might lead to escape or at least understanding. The air carrying a faint, clean scent of wet stone that cuts through the rot like a promise of renewal, though your stomach's growl disputes that, its emptiness a constant reminder of survival's cost in this forgotten pit. The year indeterminate, but perhaps the 1400s, in Warwick or Leap Castle, where oubliettes were sealed with iron grates that rusted over time, allowing rare escapes according to hushed legends, a surprising twist revisiting the priest from the oubliette's lore, who survived by eating rats but whose tale now evolves a hidden account, suggests he scratched a message into the stone that guided rescuers years later. A faint hope etched in desperation that you trace with trembling fingers along the wall, finding scratches that might be random or might spell salvation, though the darkness hides their meaning, the cool dampness on your skin now a balm that contrasts the fever's lingering heat, mutating the sensory motifs into a softer register, the iron's whisper fading, the torchlight's glimmers dimming, the dampness a gentle touch, while the musty rot softens into a background hum. Like the fan you turned on before this journey began, its soft whir a modern echo in this ancient abyss, grounding you in a moment where pain recedes but questions persist. The psychological chill now a quiet tremor that ripples through your thoughts rather than a frozen abyss, making you wonder if endurance is possible when hope is as thin as the air you breathe. The stone walls no longer closing in but standing sentinel, their silence a challenge to find meaning in suffering's aftermath. The hunger's ache now a rhythm you match with slow breaths, each one a small victory against oblivion's pull, the glimmers above casting faint shadows that outline the bones around you, not as threats but as relics of stories untold. Their presence a reminder that you're not alone in this pit, even if the company is dead, the air's dampness now carrying a faint mineral tang that replaces the rot's dominance, a subtle shift that feels like the oubliette offering a truce, though you know it's temporary, the hunger's thief still lurking, stealing strength with every passing hour. The scratches on the wall under your fingers sparking a memory of the smuggler's bone whistle from the rat dungeon, now mutated into a tale of a condemned poet who, in a similar pit in 1470, carved verses into the stone that were found centuries later, inspiring ballads of defiance that some historians dismiss as romantic fiction, but others cite as evidence of art's power to outlast cruelty. A faint spark that makes you hum softly, a tuneless sound that echoes faintly in the chamber, not calming rats, but calming your own racing heart, a light sarcasm flickering through your thoughts. Oh, what a poetic residency, all expenses paid with hunger and darkness, far better than a writer's retreat with bad Wi-Fi, or at least you can tweet your misery. But here your only audience is the void, the glimmers above now steadying into a consistent glow, as if the oubliette is revealing a hidden slit in the ceiling, a historical tidbit absurd in its cruelty. Some pits were designed with such slits not for escape, but to let in just enough light to taunt prisoners with the world above, a leech-like trick that prolonged despair by dangling hope just out of reach. The dampness now a steady drip that pools in small puddles around you, cooling your fevered skin but reminding you of the lake's teasing lap in the scaphism boat. The air's mineral tang now a faint lifeline that keeps you tethered to reality. The hunger's ache a metronome that counts down your endurance. The stone's cold a familiar companion that no longer bites but cradles. The musty rot fading into a background whisper that blends with the drip's rhythm, creating a strange lullaby that soothes even as it warns. The glimmers casting a soft light that outlines your trembling hands, tracing scratches that might be letters or mere marks of despair. The injustice of your confinement now a quieter weight. Not burning rage, but a resigned sorrow that echoes the fates of the boy, the sailor, the highwayman, all woven into your own. Their stories a tapestry of endurance that you cling to like a threadbare blanket. The psychological chill now a gentle shiver that ripples through your thoughts, urging you to hold on, to find meaning in the cracks of history's veil. The air's dampness now a breathable mist that carries the faint hope of morning, though the darkness persists. The glimmer's a promise of light that might not lie. The stone walls now a canvas where your own story etches itself alongside the forgotten. The hunger's ache a reminder that survival is defiance, even in silence. The metallic tang now a soft echo that fades with each slow breath. The torchlight's glimmers mutating into a steady glow that feels like dawn's first touch. A poetic zoom-out stretching the oubliette to the world above, where castles rise on the backs of the buried, their spires piercing skies that ignore the pits below. A lyrical bridge between Earth's depths and heaven's indifference, shifting your focus from personal survival to the timeless question of what endures when suffering fades. The air's mineral tang now a faint lifeline that anchors you to the present. The modern aside, flickering this quiet endurance feels like waiting out a power outage in a storm, candlelit and alone, where patience outlasts panic, far better than scrolling through chaos online, where hope drowns in noise. But here it flickers in the dark, fragile but real, the glimmers above now a constellation of possibilities, casting the bones in soft relief. A strange visual image of a skeletal choir watching in silence. Their presence no longer menacing, but a testament to shared struggle. The psychological chill easing into a quiet resolve that whispers of strength beyond the body's limits. What faint light will these cracks reveal, as the silence deepens and hope dares to stir in the fading echoes of despair? You feel the silent reflections emerge like faint stars piercing the oubliette's unyielding dark. Their gentle glow softening the jagged edges of your thoughts, as if the stone walls themselves exhale a quiet wisdom, whispering that over 95% of prisoners in these medieval pits never left. Their stories buried in unmarked graves according to crumbling castle ledgers, yet could you weave a lesson from this abyss to carry beyond its confines? Or will the silence claim your final breath? The air settles into a delicate stillness, its damp mineral tang now a soothing mist that brushes your lips with a clean, earthy freshness, mutating the choking mouldiness of despair into a subtle breath of renewal that fills your lungs with hesitant ease. The sensory motifs of flickering torchlight now fading into a soft, imagined dawn that filters through unseen cracks above, no longer blinding but tender, casting a pale luminescence that bathes the bone-strewn floor in a gentle haze, the iron taste on your tongue dissolving into a faint salty memory of sweat and blood, now softened like the aftertaste of a storm past, while the damp chill of the walls transforms into a cool embrace that cradles your trembling frame. No longer jabbing, but supporting your curled form like a mother's touch. The hunger's hollow ache, now a quiet pulse that syncs with your slowing heartbeat. Each throb a reminder of endurance rather than defeat. The stone beneath you no longer a bed of nails, but a steady anchor. Its rocky protrusions smoothed by the light's caress into contours that hold you gently. The sensory struggle easing into a meditative calm, where the musty rot fades into a distant hum, blending with the drip of water somewhere in the dark. A rhythm that lulls your mind into a fragile peace, as if the oubliette is loosening its grip, offering a truce in this moment of resolution, where the torments of the rack, the keel-hauling's waves, the elephant's crush, the stakes grind, the sack's chaos, the rat's burrow, the gibbet's sway, and the honeyed swarm recede into echoes that no longer scream but whisper, their collective weight lifting like fog under dawn's touch. The air now carrying a faint breeze that smells of stone and time, a cleansing scent that washes away the decay's residue, the glimmers above steadying into a consistent glow that outlines the bones around you, not as threats, but as relics of resilience, their silent presence a testament to those who endured before you. The psychological chill, now a soft shiver that ripples through your thoughts like a fading tide, urging you to find meaning in the injustice that bound you here. The stone walls standing not as captors, but as witnesses to history's lessons, their silence a canvas where your own story etches itself alongside the forgotten. The hunger's ache now a quiet companion that teaches survival's cost. Each breath a small defiance against oblivion's pull. The metallic tang fully faded into a clean aftertaste that mirrors the air's freshness. The torchlight's glimmers now a gentle dawn that paints the chamber in hues of possibility. A poetic zoom-out stretching the oubliette to the world beyond. Where castles crumble and empires fade, their spires and pits alike swallowed by time's patient march. A lyrical dissolution that widens your perspective from personal suffering to the universal truth that cruelty's shadow cannot outlast the human spirit's quiet strength. The air's mineral tang now a lifeline that anchors you to this moment. The modern aside flickering this stillness feels like the calm after a long night's vigil, waiting for dawn with a single candle. Far better than chasing fleeting trends online where meaning drowns in noise. But here it rises in silence, fragile yet enduring, the glimmers casting a soft light that outlines your trembling hands, tracing scratches on the wall that might be letters or mere marks, now symbols of defiance rather than despair. The injustice of your confinement now a lesson carved in stone, not burning rage but a quiet resolve that echoes the fates of Anne Askew, the boy, the sailor, and countless others, their stories a tapestry of endurance woven into yours, teaching that survival is not just living but understanding. The hunger's ache a reminder that even in scarcity, the mind can find sustenance in reflection. The stone walls now a sanctuary where pain distills into wisdom, the dampness a gentle mist that cools your fevered brow, the musty rot now a faint echo that blends with the drip's lullaby, creating a melody of survival that sings softly in your chest. The glimmers above now a constellation of hope that guides your thoughts toward light, the historical fact weaving in like a thread oubliettes. Outlawed after the French Revolution in 1789 as humanity's conscience stirred, left behind records of rare survivors who emerged to pen accounts of resilience, their words shaping modern laws that reject such cruelty, a fact that grounds your fading delirium in a truth that endures beyond the pit. The academic uncertainty lingering, did these pits truly house thousands, or were their horrors amplified to spur reform? A debate in historical texts that fades as the glimmers brighten, suggesting a world above where light awaits, the surprising twist revisiting the poet from the oubliette's lore, whose carved verses were found in 1600s Ireland, inspiring ballads that outlived the castle's stones. A tale some call myth but others see as proof that art defies oblivion, a spark that makes you hum softly, the sound vibrating in the chamber like a prayer for release, not to calm rats but to anchor your soul, light sarcasm whispering through the calm. What a masterclass in resilience. Free tuition in history's hardest school, far better than motivational seminars that promise growth through platitudes. But here growth is real, forged in silence's crucible. The glimmers now steady, casting the bones in soft relief. A strange visual image of a skeletal choir singing in silence. Their presence a reminder that you're part of a larger story, one of endurance against cruelty's weight. The air's freshness now a breath of dawn that carries hope's faint scent. The stone's cool touch a grounding force that holds you steady. The hunger's pulse a rhythm of survival that beats in time with your heart. The psychological chill now a gentle breeze that lifts the fog from your mind, revealing a truth that injustice, though heavy, cannot bury the will to reflect and rise. The glimmers above brightening into a dawn that promises not just survival, but understanding. The walls no longer captors, but teachers. Their silence a lesson that meaning endures where pain fades. The air's mist now a soft veil that cools your thoughts. The musty rot a distant memory that fades with each breath. The torchlight's glimmers now a steady light that guides you toward resolution. A poetic zoom-out envisioning the world above where dawn breaks over fields once stained by blood. A lyrical dawn where human cruelty yields to compassion's slow bloom. Shifting your focus to the timeless lesson that from suffering's depths, wisdom emerges like a star from the night. The modern comparison lingering, this feels like waking from a nightmare to find the world still turning, far better than chasing validation in a digital void, where meaning is fleeting but here it's eternal, carved in the heart's quiet resolve. The glimmers casting a final glow that outlines your form, not broken but whole. A strange visual image of a figure rising from bones, not in defeat, but in quiet triumph. The silence now a whisper of lessons learned, a gentle call to carry forward the strength found in the abyss. What light will dawn's full embrace reveal? As the oubliette fades and the world's soft hum welcomes you back, you feel the oubliette's stone walls recede into a softening haze, their once oppressive chill now fading into a gentle coolness that brushes your skin like a sigh from a distant, forgiving wind. The air's mineral tang dissolving into a faint, clean breath that carries the scent of morning dew, as if the earth itself is exhaling centuries of sorrow to cradle you in a quiet embrace. The glimmers above dimming into a tender twilight that bathes the chamber in a soothing glow, no longer sharp but diffused, like candlelight flickering through a veil of mist. The bones around you settling into silent stillness, their jagged edges blurring into soft shapes that no longer threaten but rest. Companions in a story that now feels less like torment and more like a dream half-remembered. The hunger's ache easing into a gentle pulse that syncs with the slow rhythm of your breaths, each one longer and deeper, drawing in the calm that fills the space where screams once echoed, the metallic tang on your tongue fading entirely, replaced by the subtle sweetness of air untainted by decay, the dampness on your skin now a cooling mist that soothes rather than stings, the stone floor beneath you no longer jabbing but supporting your weary frame, like a bed of moss in a forgotten forest, the darkness lifting into a twilight where shadows soften into whispers of release, the sensory motifs of torchlight, iron, and rot dissolving into a tranquil hum that mirrors the fan's soft whir in your distant room. A modern echo that grounds you as the oubliette's walls fade into empty halls, their silence no longer heavy but serene, like a castle abandoned to time's patient care, the lessons of endurance and injustice settling into your heart like seeds in fertile soil, promising growth beyond pain's reach, the air now a gentle breeze that carries away the last vestiges of fear, leaving only the quiet strength of reflection, the glimmers above blending into a starry sky that stretches beyond stone, a poetic expanse where dawn's first light kisses the world with hope. The bones now mere outlines in the fading glow, their stories woven into yours, a tapestry of resilience that warms your soul as the cold recedes, the hunger's pulse now a distant memory, the chamber's confines melting into open fields where grass sways under a gentle sun, the silence a whisper that speaks of survival's quiet triumph, urging you to rest in the knowledge that even the darkest pits yield lessons that endure, the world's soft hum enveloping you like a lullaby, guiding you back to the present where the fans drone and the night's calm wait, a final whisper of peace settling over you like a blanket, heavy with history but light with hope.